us. The new generation. The next level. Sending it big.
You're in for a good run. Let's go.
Come with us to the track, to the trails, to the slopes, to the surf, to the fight, to the race.
Look at this!
To the 4 a.m. starts, training harder, pushing further, hitting back, hard. To the fans, to the followers, and the haters.
But it doesn't matter.
Come with us to the blood, to the sweat, and the broken bones. Cue rehab. We never quit. We never give up. We take control. To the world titles. To the world's first. The world's best.
UFC strawweight champion.
Come with us. We're just getting started.
It's going to be so much fun, I promise you.
Let's go!
Monster Black.
Monster Blade!
Nice.
Monster Blade!
Monster Black.
That right there, monster plays of the week.
Okay.
Monster Energy is doing a monster site giveaway.
NSE stay-at-home series
Supported by Monster Energy.
Hello everyone and welcome to the NSE stay-at-home series supported by Monster Energy. My name is Canfit, joined by Stanley Greyheart Barker today. Stan, of course, we're very excited to be here today, but this is not the beginning of this particular competition.
No, it's not. We've had some play already. Plenty of players who entered into this fantastic tournament, but now only 8 remain, Peter.
Yeah, so we've come all the way from 43 players starting yesterday to just 8 today. Of course, before we get into things, a small aside to the University of Warwick for winning the University Esports Award of the Year for the 5th year in a row. Congratulations to them again. But let's take a look at our 8 players today who are playing for £200 worth of prizes. So we've got some names on here that are new to us, but we've also got a very familiar name up at the very top of that leaderboard.
Yeah, YLCO, someone who recently we've seen Northern Legends and Guns Patches and others, so they're coming in strong to this one. But Don Master 6, the only JX, Rabbit, Fufu, Bandboy, Ben in Brackets, I'm going to learn how to pronounce that one as we go on, and Hudson,
Yes.
all coming in strong after knocking out a lot of other competitors yesterday. They're going to be playing 4 rounds of TFT with their points coming in. We'll slowly see that table being filled out. You'll get 8 points for a first place, all the way down to only 1 for an 8th place in every game.
It's worth noting that while the points have reset between days 1 and 2, these players are listed in their finish in day 1. So YLCO did come in with an extremely impressive showing in day 1. Managed to get 2 firsts, I believe, and also alongside that is on a 3-game winning streak. So believe it was a 3rd and then first all the way since then.
I mean, that's just tremendously impressive and is certainly going to put themselves down as one of the ones to beat today. But that also does raise a question of, will things that they've been known to go for become more contested as a result, as people maybe try to freeze them out of that top position? Will they find ways to stop that from happening? I guess we'll find out once we get in towards that first game.
As you said, for YLCO, certainly a player who's managed to make an impact in the international scene. I think you're very much right that they have got a lot of eyes on them. For the other players, though, from Manchester Metropolitan University, I believe it's Don Master who came in second. The who's actually been doing pretty well so far. Unlike YLCO, who's already made his impact on the international stage, Don Master specifically has said he's got no plans to go pro, but perhaps those plans will be changed based on how well things have been going so far.
Yeah, there's always the opportunity, and when you're competing already at a really strong level, no one's come into this one as an absolute rookie. As obviously, you're not going to be a terrible player if you made it into the top 8. These are already all strong competitors, and it's nice to know that there's the opportunity for these players to branch off into bigger tournaments as things go on. Going back a little bit to the points and the scoring we were talking about earlier on, of course, impressive showing from YLCO, the same from all 7 other competitors coming in alongside them into this final today. But yesterday, it was a case of making the cut. It was a case of being in the top 8 players to be able to make your way through to today's finals. Today, it's all about finishing as high as you possibly can, with only the top 3 getting themselves part of that prize pool.
So let's on. Well, of course, we'll be talking about our players more as those games progress. But of course, we are on patch 13.8 right now. So one of the first ones being played here. So this is not a big major patch, but there have been some significant changes.
Yes, some really big ones coming in. I mean, you and I, we've both had a fair amount of opportunity to play a few games, get a bit of a feel for it. One of the main things, of course, that has been targeted is LeBlanc with the way the hack targeting and, just general buff is working. So maybe we're going to be seeing less prolific LeBlancs killing people off, but Nara has been slightly less hurt by the changes.
Sure. I mean, we're still in the kind of world where we're expecting players to be taking some amount of time to readjust to this new reality. So I wouldn't be at all shocked to see, a few LeBlanc sneaking through. As you said, Nah, still pretty decent with where he is, but perhaps there's a little bit more room for other comps to shine.
Well, we are onto the convergence, and here we are. It is the aforementioned YLCO. They're our first seed, so it makes sense that they're the first ones we follow today. It's a great setup that we've got. We're able to be using other people's streams to be able to bring you these different views of players as they go through these opening rounds. Of course, this is just a case of maybe they're lucky and pick up a 3-cost unit from the drops, and maybe that'll direct them where they're going to go. But really, we don't have to talk about that until we get to the first augment.
Oh, sure. Shout out to our producer Kenny, trying valiantly to keep up with all the action here today. It's going to be a pretty wild one. We're playing 4 games today again. Points resetting. And our players really looking to land themselves in the top 3 who have to walk away from this one with prizes.
So, Peter, I'm interested to hear your thoughts as we come into this one. Obviously, we've played a lot around the new set, and I'm not asking you to stray away after only a couple of days in. Tell me what's the best thing right now. But what are you enjoying playing? What have you tried out?
Oh gosh, I mean, I've been messing around with a lot more of these 1-cost reroll compositions, so I'm really hoping one of them comes through here. I know for our players, in particular, if they are looking to be a little bit more than, where they would normally be, because this is kind of a top 3 tournament rather than the top 4 as you normally have in TFT, having something like YLCO has here, like an early underground start, would definitely be a good way to make sure that you've got a solid line in for a top finish.
Just missing out on that Ezreal or potentially an early Sona to be able to get underground activated as quickly as possible. Has a chance to pivot through to duelists as well, should they want to. We're seeing these first few augments getting picked up. It's going to just be a silver augment, so nothing too exciting, though. We may see a heart here or there.
Yeah, I mean, the hearts definitely give you a huge amount of direction, but do lock you down in a one direction. Further to your question from before, as there we go, that's our first heart coming in for the only... Sure shots will be locked in for the rest of the game, and that will be expecting to be paired up with Infinity Team because, of course, Sivir and Ultimate Ezreal, or Future Ezreal, will be also members. A solid start, and a chance to slam in some early items as well.
I'm going to go to 4 as well, just to make sure that they're giving themselves the biggest opportunity to get them, despite the fact they've not been able to 2-star any of these units just yet.
Yeah, pretty solid. Not going to be slamming too much as of yet. It looks like only is being a little conservative as they go up against the opponent here. So one of the other compositions that's kind of indirectly become a little bit stronger is the Anima squad composition. Of course, we all remember what it's like to have your Misfortune Ultimate absorbed by an Oxforce unit. That is no longer possible in the same kind of way.
It's a big change. One of the units as well that's been, in my opinion, quite nicely buffed up is going to be the Jinx. That's not what we're seeing here, though. Instead, it's going to be quite interestingly a Gunblade early on the vein, just probably being used as an item holder for now.
Hey, certainly Vayne has picked up in popularity I mean, even if you're having to fight for misfortunes across the board, generally Vayne, with Duelist being as underplayed as it is not a particularly hard unit to get up there in 2-star, maybe even 3-star as well. But though, only did take an L on that first one. As we noted, their board is not 2-starred as of yet. Infiniteam really going to hit their stride once they can get those 2 stars duplicated.
Okay, so we'll have a little look at some of the other comps we're going to be able to transition through now. And this is Rabbit Fufu, which is, I have to put it out there, one of my absolute favourite names we're coming across in this tournament.
Yes.
Throwbacks to Bunny Fufu, and getting to see him come in. Maybe here, around about Easter time, they're going to have a good result.
See the two of our players are actively chatting with each other during the game.
And why
It's always fun to see. We have got a few players here from the same university. A couple of people from the University of Bristol and a couple of people from the University of Durham as well. So there's a very good chance they may have even practiced together. This will be an interesting situation to be in, to know that your success may well come at the expense of your university mate.
Rabbit Fufu quite comfortably taking the round here, and going to deal a good chunk of damage in the early stages, continuing that win streak. One round still remaining until the carousel. We'll see if they're able to continue that domination all the way through to that first neutral.
Rabbit certainly is playing the very definition of the strongest board available. You can see different configurations and heavy item slams on that 2-star Nasus for the time being. I think Ace is a pretty solid shout here. There's not a huge amount of damage in Rabbit's composition right now, but the front line is impeccable.
They're not going to be able to get their hands on the priority items when we come towards carousel as well, so it's going to be a while probably before they're hitting the big damage spikes, but just knowing that they're able to take so much damage while Draven picks away and gets the executes from the back line is going to be enough to keep them winning for now. But they are coming up against that Vayne, this Animal Squad which we saw earlier on. Let's see how they're able to hack it here.
This is interesting, from the way Rabbit Fufu has been seen to be playing in the first day. They're hitting a lot of top 3s and one top 4, and no bot 4s whatsoever, which appropriately enough caused them to come in 4th overall. So, I mean, while that's a safe and solid playstyle, in this particular situation here, hitting 4th in the tournament overall end up with you leaving with nothing. So we're going to be needing to see Rabbit push through further than we've seen them push before.
Yeah, back in the old days of game shows, you got nothing for a pair. Here you get nothing for 4th place or lower, unfortunately. So we're going to have to see people pushing for those wins. Maybe it will involve taking a bit of risks. It'll certainly involve taking risks for anyone who finished in the bottom 4 in this first game, in my opinion, Peter, because once you've had that early loss, it just means that you have to do so much more to give yourself any opportunity of getting enough points in the bag to actually push forward at the end of the day.
I think there's and if we take that in mind as the way the players are going to be approaching this game, we did in fact see Mr. Fufu himself complaining about the Kaiser players already in the lobby. There's a huge temptation to just go with what you know works, and while a lot of the meta compositions did get nerfed in 13.8, some might argue, some might be me, that they weren't nerfed hard enough, and we're kind of left in a fairly similar position to where we were before.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I don't think there were any dramatic changes apart from maybe the ones we were talking about with LeBlanc earlier on, and that's kind of normal for this stage where we're at the second half. Well, the second half of this set, if that makes sense, with the mid-patch changes that have come in. But yeah, it's I think this set's in a pretty good place, but there are certainly certain comps that I'm getting a little tired of seeing.
Oh, for sure. I mean, yeah, you're right. I think that is the big elephant in the room, is the presumably lack of LeBlanc in the mix. And, I don't imagine that Gnar's necessarily going to make up the difference in the same way LeBlanc was doing. Just because for Gnar, ideally you want to have, a gadgeting emblem or something similar. Whereas for LeBlanc, you could pretty much run her out of nearly anywhere. And from what we've seen from our players so far, none of them that we've seen at least are running LeBlanc. And I don't think we've even got any Gnar players as of yet.
We haven't. I think one of the things, Peter, and we chatted about this a little bit as we were playing Double Up the other day with the Gnar, is that it still feels to me like you almost have to 3-star Gnar if you want it to be that endgame win condition. Whereas with a LeBlanc, even just having it at 2-star, it works in so many different ways back before the changes. So maybe that's part of the reason why we're not seeing anyone going for it at the minute. Maybe it's something that will become more contested or opted into later on, with people realizing that actually no one is going for this as things stand. We're following YLCO here. They're having a pretty rough time of things. They dropped to 69 health, now all the way down to 61 before even getting to neutral. good for them. Of course, they're continuing the lose streak. They're going to get the max income, but losing almost a third of their, well, over a third of their health. I can't even do the maths. I'm that surprised that YLCO is this low.
Well, we know the YLCO is on a 3-game winning streak, and there's only a few ways you can realistically make that happen against some pretty damn good players who are playing in our top 8, and that's to play pretty close to the bone. YLCO, has sacrificed all this HP to get the underground streak going. Was at underground 4 for a little bit there to maximize the amount of stacks. I think we're going to be seeing the swing around the sun strategy from YLCO to come back and get a 4th place in a row.
What's a way of... Well, that's not the question I want to ask. What I'd like to ask Peter is, what do you like to do in the underground world? If you've got all of that big payout, you're rich as you can possibly be, you've got all the extra items, where do you like to go if you're pivoting out of underground?
I mean, the big pile of legendaries is always going to be your first port of call if you can make it happen. Always the difficulty with the underground, though, is that sometimes, as you've noted here, things start to get a little out of control and you're forced to cash out a bit earlier than you expected, and then come up with a board with what you have, which oftentimes won't be overly pointed, and you'll just need to spend a lot of that cash out gold on staying alive.
Yeah, that is pretty much the worst case scenario for an underground player, and it's a scenario that YLCO doesn't find themselves actually too far away from having to invest in towards. So we'll see how much longer they are content with having the lose streak from, as Loki and Hope both show their disdain for YLCO's early gameplay.
Well, not the only ones. We're seeing Don Master from the MMU, who came in, I believe, 2nd overall in yesterday's competition, running the Spell Slingers. It's worth noting again the change to Oxforce, which has allowed them to trade out their 1 second of invulnerability for 1.5 seconds of a fairly substantial shield. In certain circumstances, that can still be just as good. So I think the Spell Slingers have remained pretty damn viable.
We're going away from YLCO's screen, but just to touch for a moment on the 2nd of augments they've gone for. Again, seeing the silver augments coming in, and we did see YLCO there going for the tiny titans, so getting back a big chunk of that lost health.
I mean, that's such a good competitive player augment for it to be on silver as well. As we get the 2nd silver one in, so our players will be relying on their comps to make up the difference. Band of Thieves, of course, a very, very popular choice. Thriller Hunt also gets a lot of play. For now, though, not only their board is pretty solid. Of course, there is always a little bit of a problem with the sure shots, that you've got this big divide between the early sure shots and the late sure shots that really lets you get the board online.
Like we're seeing the Thieves' Gloves here on the Lucian. Already got it 2 stars, so it just means you're going to be outpouring damage from the back, even though you haven't got quick draw running at the moment. And it's doing a decent chunk of damage, but the Gnar that we are seeing played here is more of a supportive Gnar. It's the Draven that's doing the work in the back line. This is still Rabbit Fufu's board, who is still unbeaten throughout this entire game, and will continue to be so.
I picked up a Defender heart there, so that Draven should be really interesting. So with the, to speak a little bit more about the hacker changes, there's no longer given any Omnivamp across the unit that gets hacked across. So maybe we're just going to see Draven compositions from this point forward. Just playing the Draven straight out of the corner rather than trying to throw it into the backliners has been the issue for so many players.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I'm actually really fascinated to see where Rabbit Fufu goes with this one, because it feels like at this moment, with so much health to play around, as we actually get a chance to look at their board. Thank you very much to our terrific production team. As you were saying, they've gone for the extra defender, so the ability to go in for this with the Wukong, with the Garen, is immense. But then what do you do in terms of which unit are you prioritizing as your mech? Because if you're not hitting the 3-star Draven, which realistically we're not going to be seeing here, it's not going to be that.
Oh, I do wonder if maybe there's something else in mind later on. I mean, right now, Defender, of course, you normally would get Defender 2 if you're running Wukong, and eventually Set. So presumably that's got in mind for Rabbits to keep things up at Defender 4 from this point forwards. I mean, the board is pretty darn good, and we are seeing some Infinity coming through on the bench, so perhaps that's where this eventual streak will land them.
Okay, so as we get towards our next big carousel, we'll see what the odds have decreed. We are going to be seeing the 4-cost units potentially able to be picked up here, especially for those who are lucky enough to get out early on. Misfortune, one of the units on the board with a Crit Cloak available as well. Considering we've had some Anima players, I expect that to be quite highly contested, but it's not gone just yet, Peter.
No, that's really interesting. So let's see, that's going to be our friend Ben in brackets who picked up that one. We do know, of course, there's a few different good spatula options at the moment. Of course, Infinity, big fans of it, Anima Squad as well. Let's see where we're heading. Oh, we will be checking in with brackets. So yes, let's see. So where did that one end up going? Or did I hallucinate the whole thing?
Yeah, so the Misfortune there, you can see it on the bench, and the Crit Glove was picked up alongside it. But because
that's right, the Crit Glove.
Already the one ace already in there, you can't really be throwing in the MF at this point on, potentially opening up the opportunity to go the aces later on, though, which is what we talked about Rabbit Fufu possibly trying to do as well.
This is interesting. I mean, of course, we've had the augments which let you get into ace more deeply, but it's relatively rare to see people sort of actively pursuing it. But yeah, I mean, the setup is pretty decent right now. I don't know if it's good enough to take down the Spell Slingers. We take in with Don Master, who has got a fairly solid Nico, along with our first LeBlanc, though not a Hacker LeBlanc, thankfully.
No, and again, I don't think we're really going to be seeing too much of that today. I kind of hope to be proved right there. Meanwhile, Nico doing absolutely tons of damage. Still a unit that can absolutely be one of your key carries, and getting that this early on for Don Master certainly helping them out as they continue that strong win streak. Rabbit Fufu also going to keep the win streak going. And we are getting closer and closer towards that next neutral. And right now, this is very much a game the sort of split very interestingly in terms of health. We've got obviously Rabbit Fufu standing alone at the top of the table, still on 100 HP, perfectly intact. Then a little drop off to the players in the 80s and second and third. Then we've got a few players in the 60s, one in the 50s, all the way down on 40 HP, having a real shocker at the minute is the only JX.
Yeah, not doing so well. Of course, if you're taking on Lost Streak and you haven't got Underground going, unlike YLCO, then things are going to be very, very harsh indeed. So we've managed to get up to the Infinite Team at 5. Of course, got the Sure Shot 2 from before. At least there's a good amount of money in the bank and a solid loss streak, which will hopefully persist into this round as well. But given that we've got a level 5 board on the other side, maybe that loss streak actually drops before we go to Wolves.
I know people have different opinions on this one, Peter, but I know there's a lot of people who would be frustrated if they're playing Infinite Team and both of the potential Infinite Team slots are on the front line, essentially saying, yep, you're going to be getting your Shen, maybe a Pantheon or another emblemed champion coming out as your extra duplicate. It means you don't have the opportunity to have that double ultimate Ezreal later on.
Oh, for sure. I definitely would prefer to have that flexibility. And for JX, they would have preferred to have kept their loss streak going as well, but they will not. Which means that rather than going into Wolves here with a full bank balance and the streak, they'll have to settle for half as that. And this is going to really affect their ability to go into the deep late game with enough money to spend.
Massively going to hurt their economy. But talking about economy, here's YLCO on the Underground. Now after 5 Underground in has been... I think they've waited on the payout still. And they've got the opportunity here to get an absolutely insane pop from it. And that's all because of that tiny Titans earlier on. They'd be down at 31 HP right now if it weren't for that.
Wow. I mean, yeah, this is pretty scary stuff if you're in the lobby. Ideally, you really want YLCO, in the position that only JX is, liable to be eliminated soon. But to have this much room to work with when we're in a lobby with silver augments, I think this next augment is going to be very telling, though, as to how the rest of this game is going to go.
I think it will be huge. Well, I was literally about to take the words out of my mouth there, hugely telling. But if my memory serves me correctly, it has to be a hero augment next.
Oh, gosh. I don't have that to hand, but that would make sense. We've seen silvers so far.
I want to say it's 100% chance on hero after double silver, but I could be wrong. We'll see how it goes.
I guess we'll find out.
We will. Yeah, sorry. I didn't mean to... start a conversation we couldn't give a conclusive answer to. Maybe someone out there in the chat will know.
Certainly YLCO, I think this is pretty much the best case scenario here because he hasn't had to commit to any direction before this point. I believe there's a static ship in the mix, but that's pretty much it. And there's very likely in the Underground cash out to be, even potentially Reforgers coming in as well.
Yep.
So yeah, YLCO I think might actually find that direction in this next augment.
Okay, well, it's coming up, and there we go. We've
Woof.
got the 5 and the 4 costs, and that's being refreshed. It's going to be the Syndra opted into.
Okay, yeah, I mean, to be fair, YLCO came into this one again, 3 first place in a row. Why not just take the Hero Organ, which gives you the ability to cap out your board in the most absurd way possible by just chucking in your bench along with your board? I mean, I think this is very, very bad news. YLCO still has to, make their cash out, but they should be able to do it, I believe, this round if they lose.
I believe so, and it's just looking really scary for everybody else who's going to have to compete against them. Rabbit Fufu, of course, still keeping that win streak going, still looking great for securing one of those probably top 3 places in this game, but in a moment I feel like they're going to have YLCO breathing down their neck, and the rest of the lobby must be a bit scared about how that payout's going to affect things. Here we can see Misfortune is going to be the ultimate of choice, whether it's the gold or the shield, I'm not too sure. I guess we'll find out as the first ult comes through on the back of this Sphere of Shock.
Oh yes, I'm not so much of. There we go. So this is the carry augment for Misfortune. So that's the extra shield and a little bit more of a spread. I do wonder, given that Quickshot also gives you more spread, how necessary it is as an augment anymore. But as we can see, getting effectively deep into Quickshot with Misfortune without having to play Quickshot is a pretty big buff.
We did see that loss taken YLCO over the precipice, and there's the option. That is a cut and run off, well, around about 50 gold, I think. So huge amount to spend both on leveling and then just burning through in terms of picking up new units as well. Already taking out the underground, starting things up. We'll see exactly where they go with this.
I mean, they have been sitting on the Kaiser for a while, and that's got to be pretty tempting. See, up to Star Guardian 5 right now, thinking about going to Star Guardian 6. I think we might just be seeing a classic of the previous patch, which is just a big pile of Star Guardians, throw Kaiser on the backline, eventually get it to 3-star if you need to, and then, question mark, win the game.
Fun itemization here onto the Garen as well, building it almost its carry style when you'd mech it, but obviously without having gone full mech, it's going to still provide a decent amount of tanky frontliners, but going up against this augmented Leona, having a bit of a hard time things, and it looks like NLCO might be continuing the loss streak, but Syndra bops at Alistar right on the head of the opposition, and that's enough to see YLCO taking down Hudson.
And that was a pretty big moment for YLCO, who's going to have to navigate this very carefully. That payout being all money means that it's all about keeping hold of that money as long as possible and ideally getting to level 9. But if YLCO did that, that would pretty much clean him out entirely. He's definitely not in a strong enough board position where he can afford to take too many risks.
Peter, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels like the factor of the matter is that they absolutely had to take the payout at that point. And, had they waited any longer on it, they would have been risking losing so much help just to keep Underground in. So the fact that the gold is there is certainly not perfect for them, but they've used it well. They'll be pushing up to 8 on this level as a result, and then we'll see what they're able to get on the back of the carousel as well.
I mean, my son rule for fun for my... always cash out one before you think you need to.
Yeah. By the time you need to, it's almost too late, is essentially the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There is some good news here for Only, who we did know was also struggling, has managed to find a fairly early air trail. So the Sure Shot 3 in play. We also got Janna powering up as well. So this is a pretty solid board, and you notice the 2 frontline Infinite teams will at least buy a good amount of time for air trail to work with.
Yeah, they're going to be chunky, itemized, as of course they will be. The fact that they've not been able to get any kind of Infinity Team crown obviously will be disappointing to them, but even so, getting that early Ezreal that you were talking about there has just absolutely accelerated their potential as we see the True Shot barrages raining across the Convergence. Up at the front, however, look how tanky this Garen is, surviving for so long, buying time for Kaiser to fire from the back line, and the Oni will lose that win streak they gained. Speaking of win streaks that have been lost, Rabbit Fufu has taken their first loss of the game, dropped down to 82 health.
Okay, well, that's still a pretty damn good run. Almost managed to get through 3 stages undefeated.
Ooh.
I mean, given the fact that we haven't got a Draven carry augment in the mix, this is pretty impressive. And 6th defender, it's a bold choice when a lot of people previously have been going heavily into AP comps.
So looking at this and seeing that it's the Samira Augment, I'm just wondering where this comp goes next. It feels like they still want to play Ace, but they've just not been able to get their hands onto the MF, onto the Mordekaiser obviously just yet as well. I want to stay tuned with Rabbit Fufu for where this board will go. Peter, while we ponder what's going to be coming next for this player, now feels like as good a time as any to talk about what those people in chat could be getting their hands on.
That's true. Of course, supported today by Monster Energy. If you'd like to enter in the giveaway, there will be some notes in the chat. If you type in !MonsterDrop, you can find more information about it. But just typing MonsterDrop without an exclamation mark will be enough to enter you into the competition. So please do look at that if you'd like to get yourself one of our 4 different Monster Energy stock drops, which will be telling up 4 times during today's stream.
Yeah, we got 4 games to play. To the best of my knowledge, we're going to drop 1 each game. So get yourself entered, get yourself that chance to win. You never know, that could be winging its way to you. Winging its way onto the convergence, however, Ren Sol has arrived. Last opportunity to get these item components.
And thank you for our streamer there giving us a nice little scout around as we do check in, of course, finalizing there on Only, who has got their advanced mentorship, which means that Only will be gaining a lot more XP per round and accelerating towards level 9. Doesn't make the Ezreal specifically stronger in the immediate though, so if Only is going to make a comeback here from Cambridge University, they're going to be riding it out to probably maybe even 5 HP before the turnaround.
It's looking pretty bleak for them, but I don't like to count anybody out just yet. So they've got a couple of reforgers as well, so they can pretty much have a go at doing whatever they want. Looks like they're opting into the Thieves' Gloves. Going to stick that on the Poppy, which I'm sure will get swapped out as they get maybe a Garen later on to really boost that mech. Meanwhile, here is Only, who you were just talking about, and the fact that they need to hit level 9. Well, they have now hit level 9. They've been able to throw Fiddlesticks straight out. Fiddlesticks, of course, on the front line, if you are able to get the Infinity Crest, can provide a massive boost to the team, but they've run out of gold at this point, and now it's just a case of popping the Thieves' Gloves on there and hoping that this Fiddle will do some decent work disrupting the opposition backline.
Unfortunately, the Thieves' Gloves are kind, but yes, very little room to maneuver here for Only. It's going to be relying, I think, pretty heavily on some disparate backliners. But Fiddlesticks doing some pretty good job. But, of course, the opposing Janna is enough to provide that backline disruption.
Yeah, down to 9 health, potentially a last life scenario here for Only. They have managed to hit level 9, but I'm not sure that's going to be enough to save them on this one. Meanwhile, look who's win streaking. It's our underground player, YLCO, of course, has pivoted away from that now. They are storming their way close towards the top of the table. A top of the table that was held by Rabbit Fufu for so long. They've dropped down to second as Don Master takes an advantage. We've now got the 5 players who are all 30 health or more, all the way up to 65 up the top of the screen. We've got 3 players who arguably could go out in one round, 39, 7 health of Hudson, OnlyJX, and Ben in brackets, respectively.
Ben in brackets picking up the 2-star, Echo at the tail end as YLCO starts that big old roll down. We can see that there's only one Kaiser separating YLCO from hitting full power. The Nico's already up at 2-star. This board is coming together nicely.
It's come together so well. They've managed the gold very well and been able to get a decent amount down. They've not been able to push to 9 as maybe we thought that they would, because they've invested a lot of the gold into rerolls after hitting 8. And as a result, they've got a strong board, some of those champions you were just talking about, but not being 9 maybe is what hurts them here. They do lose out to, I believe that was to Bandboy, who's now actually right at the top.
Yeah, with Bandboy playing Anima Squad, we've noted again that Misfortune, with the absence now of our good friends in the Ox Force, is picking up in popularity as much as she was already fairly popular in the previous patch. It could well be that Anima Squad might be the comp to take this first lobby.
Well, it'll have to do well against these Star Guardians. You can see both Neela and Kaiser pretty close to hitting the 3-star spike. Meanwhile, Garen now up to 2-star themselves. Things definitely looking good for NSE. Whether or not they've got enough in the tank to push forward past those 4 above them remains to be seen. We've got 3 players at death's door. One of them is the OnlyJX, as we see them going into combat against that Anima Squad team. This is going to be really tough going for them. Benin, by the way, went out in 8th.
Yeah, and that's worth noting. That was a very narrow thing, and it's another narrow thing for Only. Hopefully has gotten just above the line, but we're looking for that one big ult that will make a mess of everything.
Massive, massive damage came out of the Twisted Fate in this round. Is it enough is the question. Vayne hanging on by a thread. One last bit of damage out of Ash of all champions is enough to keep them alive. Hudson dropping down to 3 health. The bottom 3 just separated there by 13 health.
What's the noting? Hudson from the University of Dharma. Big double up player. I think we might have mentioned that briefly before. Just hit Diamond with their flatmate. Doesn't have any competitive history though, so I think for a lot of our players, this is going to be a huge learning experience for them, particularly with players like WildCO and the lobby who have certainly got the deep experience pool themselves and know how to play in a high pressure situation.
They've got a massive amount of experience, Peter. I mean, just the amount we've both got to cast them and also experience outside of that as well just shows that, as the 2 Ezreals have been hit now. If they can get that third, this could be massive for JX. And I don't know. I feel like they're the only person we're talking about, but it's because they come in with such incredible pedigree into this game and we know what they're capable of. And I'm excited to see what that means for the rest of today, because anyone who takes wins or just points off them in general, it just speaks for how well they themselves are doing, because this is such a strong player.
I mean, certainly for the rest of the lobby, they are very much looking to take it through, as we'll actually definitely see an elimination this round. But for Only has got the 2-level advantage.
Straight out deathmatch, double redemptions now on the Leona, getting an opportunity to get a double cast out of that solar flare. Unfortunately, the front line doesn't last as long for Hudson as maybe they'd have hoped, and Lucian gets picked out on the back. Now it's all down to this 3-star Ezreal. It's not enough for Hudson. JX keeps themselves alive for even longer, seeing the unpronounceable drop below them.
Yes, we're going to have to make our best guesses. Do let us know in the chat.
I'm going with Nickwemold.
I think Nick is pretty good.
Yeah,
but Only though, we've got a lot of players here. Well, now several players on eliminated, a couple more players on the single digits HP. Everybody else looking at just a tiny bit more comfortable, as we've got Banboy up at the top, who is the one on a win streak and on the top of the heap.
Sad scenes there for Only. They managed to hit the 2-star Ezreal themselves, but as they went and checked out the pools, they were here looking at this board, looking at the 2 Infinity crest and thinking, that could have been me. Could have had that Garen, that Fiddlesticks out in the front line, which of course is exactly what you're hoping for if you've got to have frontliners here as an Infinity player. Good damage coming out, and you can see how much Rabbit Fufu is struggling to deal with this. At the front, however, this Aatrox is so tanky at this point. With the Samira still free hitting on the backline, this will be an elimination of Nick.
All right, Nick, get out of there. Nick did do pretty decently to get through to this point. Was one of our very swingy players from the first day of play. Came in 8th overall, but actually had a win amongst those 4 games being played. So I was looking to see if Nick could maybe do better. In this case, coming in 6th isn't terrible. But as you said, it's going to limit your possibilities with only 4 games played.
Peter, we're following Rabbit Fufu into Morgana action here, and it's only right, of course, that Rabbit Fufu should have Battle Bunny Riven at the front of their offense, going in and wielding that Exiled Blade. And they're at level 9. They're in a strong position, of course. Having held on to so much of their health for so long means that even though now maybe that they've dropped off slightly in comparison to some of the other comps, they're still, they've guaranteed themselves top 5, realistically top 4.
Fascinating to see where Rabbit goes longer term, but something kind of coming into the conversation here, which I think is an important part of what we should be talking about, is we haven't actually even mentioned, threats directly as a concept so far. Certainly in the Golden Spatula Cup just passed, we did see several players who were really utilizing that kind of flexibility to just bring in whatever you need at any given point, including, units like Bel'Veth, and always put together yourself a pretty solid board.
This, I think, I just want to see where the positioning is here of the Shen. Yeah, this is really unfortunate for Rabbit Fufu. They got the 3rd Infinity by finding that Ezreal just at the last second, which did get an extra sure shot in for them. However, they weren't able to move that Shen across to actually get the duplicated unit. So they lost out in terms of what could have been their front line. And as a result, they take a really heavy hit here.
Rabbit Fufu does at least manage to grab hold of the Ezreal, but we are down to our top 4. Only is out of here as of that last round.
They held on so well.
Single digits.
You know what? Full credit where it's due. Only held on for so long in this game. Did really good work. Unfortunately, not quite able to creep into the big points as we get towards the last stages of this game, Peter.
I mean, it does seem like we've likely got ourselves a top 2 already decided. YLCO, in one of the better positions and also keeping themselves very strong. I think the only weakness I can see here for this board is I'm not a huge fan of putting both of your carriers around a single, around in this case, the 2 buff items means that if there isn't a CC coming that direction, that both of your carriers will be offline immediately.
Definitely a danger. Hasn't worked out quite that way so far in this round, though. YLCO looks to continue their win streak and possibly at the cost of Rabbit Fufu's life. They win streaked for so long, but in the end they drop. They go out in 4th place. Don Master takes 3rd by losing 3 health less in that last round. And now there are 2. It's going to be Bandboy. It's going to be YLCO. YLCO, who has been win streaking, who ever since that massive payout has kept themselves round about the 50 gold mark. They've patiently re-rolled. They've not invested into going level 9. They could push level 9 if they wanted to. But they keep trying to find those big units.
The big thing for Bandboy currently in the first place at the moment from the University of Durham to try and find ways to utilize those Anima Squad emblems to push the board strength just a little bit further. The Misfortune is good. The frontline Fiddlesticks with the Anima Squad emblem is good as well. And there's also a Vayne on the other side of the board. So this is about as strong as the board's going to get.
It is, and the question is it strong enough? A question which will be answered pretty quickly, as we can see this Kai'Sa absolutely shredding all left and right, all disappear in front of the might of Kai'Sa, and that will be more health being taken away from Dan as they get, from Ban as they get into what will almost certainly be the last carousel.
So just a few pieces left to put in place. I believe our players have pretty much got what they want for their carries. So Zephyr is, of course, ideal for giving them that 1 extra round of breathing room. I think this is pretty much terrible news for Bandboy. I didn't get a chance to glimpse what they've got, but YLCO couldn't have asked for a better final drop.
YLCO is going to hit level 9 now, going to be able to put yet another new unit in, and so just funneling yet more of this gold into getting more and more 5 costs. Syndra can be throwing them in left, right, and center. And having so many of these strong units coming in might well be the beginning of the end. The owner put in at the last moment just a slight change around here, taking out that Misfortune, meaning that there's just the 1 ace in play.
The Zephyr is going to be sending up the Vayne, I believe, in the back line. So that's roughly half the damage gone from there. The Misfortune will take her time with casting. The 2 carries of YLCO have been separated. So looking like the current setup is still going to be good enough, even with that recontextualized round.
Yeah, Kai'Sa just keeps going untouched, keeps shredding through the health. Right at the beginning, we talked about the chat between some of the players going, oh, not another Kai'Sa player. Kai'Sa in our lobby again. And now we've got to the end of days, and unfortunately, Kai'Sa is once again the one standing strong. 2-star Misfortune picked up as well. That's only going to make us think YLCO is taking that lobby even more so.
YL is picking up more and more stuff as we go along, as you said, filling up that bench, but what we've got right now is good enough to get the win. Unfortunately, I think Bandboy has just run out of steam at this point. Does manage to fit in a 2-star Misfortune, which apparently wasn't in place before, actually, so maybe this will be the round that something changes.
Still feels like this is going to be the last dance. Misfortune there in the corner will have that wider arc, but I don't think it's getting through the ground to the opposition Kai'Sa. Down that bottom right corner, Fiddlesticks does their best to try and start targeting, and Urgot Wave will get a bit of knock-up time. The Misfortune sends out a first barrage from that bullet time. Yet again, the front line is gone, and as a result, the back line will get eviscerated as well. Your first round winner will be YLCO. They're now on a 4-game win streak in this tournament.
A very much a statement game there from YLCO. Absolutely came to make an impact. As much as YLCO hasn't managed to necessarily, go through and win the GSC event so far, has definitely been, a player from the UK who's really has made a splash. I think, if you can establish your name at the university level and really make yourself a legend here, perhaps you can build out to something even greater.
Yeah, that's a really great performance, and well done to the players who were just below them in that one, because it feels like at some point YLCO has to stumble. They have to drop, this incredible win rate kill that they've got. And when they do, there will be players lurking, ready to pick up the pieces. And if it's some of those ones who picked up 7, 6 points there, then maybe, just maybe, YLCO is going to be given a real run for their money. But there's a reason we push them as sort of the favourites in this competition, not just because of their performance yesterday, but just based on past records. And they've kind of, shown us to be right on that one, Peter.
Oh, absolutely. So, general friends, we have got 3 more rounds to get through today. Of course, YLCO starting off ahead of the pack. But there's still, as Stan says, a chance for a turnaround if these other games go very differently than the last one. As I said, we'll be going to break when we return, which we'll have for you round number 2, as we'll look to get deeper and find out who has got what it takes.
Come with us. The new generation. The next level. Sending it big.
You're in for a good run. Let's go.
Come with us to the track, to the trails, to the slopes, to the surf, to the fight, to the race.
Look at this.
To the 4 a.m. starts. Training harder, pushing further, hitting back, hard. To the fans, to the followers, and the haters. Come with us to the blood, to the sweat, and the broken bones. Cue rehab. We never quit. We never give up. We take control. To the world titles. To the world's first. The world's best.
UFC Strawweight Champion.
Come with us. We're just getting started.
It's going to be so much fun. I promise you.
Let's go!
Monster Black.
Monster Blade!
Nice.
Monster Blade!
Monster Black.
That right there, Monster plays of the week.
Okay.
Monster Energy is doing a monster cycle giveaway.
NSE stay-at-home series.
Supported by Monster Energy.
Good morning, crack student gamers, and welcome to the British University Esports Championship Spring 2022. It's been a long time coming, and we're now live from Insomnia. We're back bigger than ever. We have so much going on here.
It's a place for all competitive gamers to come along. Even if you're not amazing, you can still take part, which is really nice, and you meet so many different students from different unis. It's just really nice, like a fun place to be.
And the NSE, by being at Insomnia, is really amazing. Especially a small, isolated university like Oxford, it's great to meet other students who are into esports.
So we've got a spectator area where the student communities come and they're meeting up for the first time in probably 2 years, getting to watch the finals, and then we've also got the teams on stage playing against each other. And then also we've got a student LAN as well, as kind of like a mini LAN in a wider bring your own computer over the weekend. Super grateful for our sponsors. Our headline partner is Intel. We're also partnered with Barclays, Monster Energy, providing loads of Monster Energy to keep everyone fueled over the weekend. PC Specialist, Special Effects, and we're also partnered with Bucks as well.
Everyone in the university scene is so welcoming and so lovely. You don't see people like this anywhere else, like in a community together. And it's just all about creating those connections with different people, and it's just really amazing.
Welcome back, everyone, to the NSE Stay-at-Home Series, supported by Monster Energy. My name is Kenneth, joined by Stanley Greyheart Parker, and we're about to get into our second of our 4 games in today. Stan, things kind of went how we expected in our first game.
Yeah, almost exactly what we sort of predicted early on. I was surprised to see the slight dip in health from YLCO, but things worked out pretty much perfectly for them. They worked around things like Tiny Titans and their payout pretty near perfectly, to be fair to them, and executed the game in a way that someone with that pedigree and that experience almost would expect them to. So full kudos to them. But also I was blown away by the performance of some of the other players in this lobby who were taking some of the other top points, which we'll have a chance to see in just a moment or so. And actually they've shown that they can be top contenders for the rest of the day.
Yeah, certainly for Bamboy, who was running the Anima squad up until the end there for University of Durham, did very, very well indeed. Was a 5th place finisher from day 1, managing to get 2nd place in a day number 2. So, of course, we're really looking for our players who can take this first game success, the first game top 4, and ideally turn that into another top 4, and really another top 1. So if you're going to be battling for the very, very top spot here.
Yeah, things are now going to be really difficult for the players you see down the bottom half of things, for JX, for Nick, Hudson, Benin, Brackets, but it's not impossible by any means. They just now need to go out and have the most dominant performance they probably can. What it does mean is that you could see 1 of 2 things out of these players. The first one, which I don't believe we'll see, and hopefully we don't see, is, of course, the fact they could just go, right, I've got a 1 or a 2-pointer. It's all done for me, and then they sort of just phone it in for the last few games. I genuinely don't believe that's what we'll see at this level of competition. Or we could see them go, right, I need to do something dramatic, something special that gets me 8 pointers. Maybe it's a little bit of a high risk, high reward scenario, and then we get to see some really, really fun comps.
I did see a question in the chat asking about the yellow icon, which is indicating University of Bristol. So YLCO are currently in 1st place, and Nick both from there as well. Hopefully they'll have had a chance to play with each other. But yes, Stan, further to what you were saying, absolutely, it does take a lot of mental resilience to be able to come back from an 8th place in your first game. I hope we get to see our players develop that skill here. I mean, it's one of the reasons to even have university esports is to get people used to this kind of situation. And hopefully Ben and Brackets will be able to come back.
Well, I actually had the pleasure at a recent LAN of doing a panel with a couple of team managers for esports teams here in the UK who have recently put together their own sort of organization and corporation. And we basically did it was the traditional what is esports. It wasn't maybe, probably for most of our viewers, it would have been the sort of thing where it was like, well, obviously I knew that. However, it was really fun to hear about the way they spoke about things and what university esports could bring in terms of bringing these players through. And actually, when you have players of the sort of level of what we're seeing here, whether or not they go to represent orgs or whether they push forward for themselves as a unit, it's so fun to see at this level these players getting up onto the next stage here at the NSC, getting to play in our tournament today or in other tournaments throughout the year. Such a great stepping stone to bigger things.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, one thing which we hit on again and again, at the regional level of TFT, as our players sort of climb that ladder from university level, is very few players are able to operate as an island here. Why we're mentioning the multiple players coming from a single university is TFT players in general will only be as strong as the people they have around them supporting them. Their practice groups, their friends and family who support their play. So if you are looking at this from the outside, thinking you maybe want to become a pro TFT player, as these players are aspiring to be, then absolutely, make your friend groups, practice groups, develop together, because that's really how you get significantly better.
Peter, I'd actually hoped to be a professional double-up player by now myself, but just held back by my partner.
I know. Honestly, the biggest lead weight in all of double-up. But hey, what can you do sometimes? So
carrying me since season 7, by the way.
Who can say? Who can say? We've got a slight delay on the start of our second game. We're going to make sure everything is fully in place. Again, only 4 games being played today, and £200 worth of prizes online. We know for some of our players are looking to try and invest that immediately in a slap-up meal once this is all said and done. But for players like YLCO, again, they're looking for them to establish as much dominance as is humanly possible and put that record of wins together that lets you go on to bigger and grander things in the future.
Just briefly to move away from that, if you don't mind, Peter, because it feels like, sometimes you have to talk about the elephant in the room, and in this case, I don't have an elephant in the room, though I do have a tiger just behind me. It's just chilling up there. But I do have little Loki here. Loki likes to be on as many of the different possible streams as possible. She's been all over. You've been on the Twitter, haven't you? Yeah. And so she's making a guest appearance here on NSE. Thor's down here. He's very jealous of it. He might bounce up at some point. And, sometimes you got to shout out some love for the Greyhounds.
I don't think sometimes, Dan. I think all the times it is very necessary. I don't know if... well, actually, no. I can say that I believe it was...
We've traded to a Thor.
Oh my gosh. Hound trades. The hound economy is absolutely booming right now. We are being told, though, that apparently Twitch themselves have written us a harshly worded email. They said we've had too much cuteness on stream.
What?
And so we're going to have to, sadly, lamentably, head into game number 2 of our event here today and just see if any of our players can keep up with YLCO.
We've moved from an elephant to a tiger to a dog in the room to a giraffe in the room now for our player in play here.
Oh no!
A picture even. And so Rabbit Fufu might. Sorry, no, this is Ben in brackets, not Rabbit Fufu. That would have made sense. It would have had to be a rabbit, surely, for Rabbit Fufu. But Ben in brackets coming in. Just showing a little bit of what they're maybe going to build towards later on if they get the perfect opportunity. So it might all change when 2 Kaisers drop. Look at the face. Look at the face. This is the player who's complaining about Kaiser players earlier on. Is now just gone, oh, the TFT gods have declared I have to play Kaiser. I got to play Kaiser, right?
It seems that the gods have a sense of humor, Stan.
Wow.
They will test those who would otherwise turn aside from this path. Do it! Do it, Ben. Throw those Kaisers in the bin. Prove that you have got what it takes to deny.
Oh dear me, no. I think we all know where this one's going for Ben in brackets. Now we'll turn our attention towards some of the others a little bit later as we get towards, of course, our first augments. I've asked you this question before, Peter, but I wonder if it's changed since the last time around. What's your personal favorite first augment? And by that I mean, do you like silver, gold, prismatic, hero?
Oh yeah, I mean absolutely. I want hero augments all day, every day.
Okay.
If you're looking for just the best augments at the moment, I think it's got to be the Star Guardian crest, crown, that kind of business.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, Ben in brackets has already got a start towards Star Guardian, but if you can find a Star Guardian crest, that also brings in the possibility of a Misfortune Star Guardian later on, which just puts the hunt to a whole other level.
Suddenly gets to pretty much perma-ult, and that's a real game changer. But you asked for hero augments, and they were delivered. It's going to be the 2 and 3 cost heroes, which is such a big game changer to get early on, especially if they find Kaiser.
This is a little bit awkward because this won't be tailored, I believe, if memory serves. So it's going to be a little harder to find. Finding the rel, I think, is a pretty solid shape because you may not find anything more relevant. Rerolling on that.
Did you do that on purpose?
Hmm?
They won't find anything more relevant.
No, that would have been clever, though.
All right. I liked it. I'm going to give you credit for it regardless. I think your brain did it even if you didn't realize it.
Well, Ben in brackets, I was a little worried that we're going to end up with no relevant augments. At least Jubilant Veil is something. I think they were really fishing for multi-shot, which is the highest value hero augment in the game at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it was a little greedy to pass on the rel when that was a perfectly serviceable augment as well.
What they're going to find now is that over on the other side, Gifted's been picked up by YLCO, so there's an immediate contest as a result on these kneelers.
And of course, we're looking for YLCO to keep that win streak maintained from yesterday. I think given now that YLCO is no longer playing Underground, but instead play a contested line, there's a very decent chance that YLCO is going to have to settle for a top 4.
Or even potentially worse, and that could completely change the entire state of our competition if that happens, because if you're out there consistently getting seconds and thirds and someone else is getting, let's say, a first and a 7th, you're suddenly going to be overtaking them as easy as you like. Over here, getting the Vex augment coming through, and I'm actually not especially familiar with what the Vex augment does.
Let's see. So we're on the support Vex augment. So this is the one which I believe, I'm going to look to see if I get this the wrong way around. They did show us briefly what it was. So I believe this is the one where as your team casts, they'll kind of be getting the heart effect, which is that you'll be getting more AP across your squad. It's a pretty decent augment all told. there is a change to the other Vex organ, which is the one that shares health around your team, but is nowhere near as popular. When just getting raw AP, I mean, with a unit like Vex, is always going to be very good.
Raw AP, and already you can see the stacks mounting up through that Archangels. So great start for Rabbit Fufu as they look to push forward. Of course, this time, last game, they were on 100 health and they stayed it for a very long time, helped with part of their result this time round. This time, only Hudson is able to say the same about themselves.
Yeah, looking pretty good for Hudson. Again, we're looking to really upturn the previous round's results. So, Bennett Brackets finished 8th, Hudson finished 7th. If they can flip that upside down entirely in game 2, they can really reset this 4-game tournament, which is really ideally, the best case scenario where you've taken the harsh early losses.
We aim not to talk about them the entire game this time around if I can help it, Peter, but this is a worrying trend for YLCO. The fact they're not running Underground have already had a significant loss streak coming towards first carousel.
Yeah, I'll be keeping a close eye out for them. I mean, imagine they can still have the potential to turn things around, but yeah, it's a lot less clear of a path. As a Rabbit Fufu, I think is just... No, sorry, of course, we've got the Archangel stacking up, so that is going to completely destroy everybody. And if these rounds go long in the future, I think Rabbit Fufu will have a very good time indeed.
Yeah, they've set themselves up for a real strength on this one. As we do get towards that carousel, lots of defensive items on offer. Very, very few offensive items here. Just the one sword, one recurve. Sorry, 2 swords, a recurve, needless, and a tier. So if you're hoping to get one of those things to complete something like a Spear of Shojin or the likes, then you might well be out of luck if you're coming out late here.
Keep an eye on what Only ends up getting here, because we've got an interesting setup. I believe that's going to be the spread shot vein that's in play. So, with Misfortune being so popular, there is a pretty decent argument to be made with Anima Squad that focusing more on the vein than the Misfortune will get you online tremendously faster and potentially even get to a 3-star, which will do perhaps even just as much damage.
It's something I love to do. I've been trying to climb up through the ranks myself recently, and Vein Carry has been my go-to composition over and over again. As soon as you get, for instance, Shojin onto it along with the spread shot, you're just putting out so much damage regardless of where you build around that. The only real question I sometimes put in is whether it's worthy putting in an early Fuhrer to get both Oxforce with the Alistair and also the Duelist firing off. It just means you don't have to invest in something like the Rage Blade quite so early for the Vein.
I mean, our players, even this early on in the game, it's going to make an enormous amount of difference, those kind of decisions they're making as to whether to optimize for right now or later on. For Rabbit Fufu, I think this gravy train might be about to stop, though, because the front line is just a little too weak to deny what we're seeing here from Don Master, who's put together a pretty solid board with a very unusual Augment. They're going to be relying more heavily on Rammus, newly buffed for this patch, to have a slightly longer stun.
And the Armadillo, they're tanking for so long, and it was such a game changer. Here we can see YLCO has eventually pivoted towards the Underground on the back of those early losses, able to get it in and get up to 9 on that attempted thievery so far.
We do remember from before, YLCO ended the game with around 26 health or so, and that's approximately what they've lost so far just trying to get into Underground. So that early, not finding Underground quite as early as before, this could directly be the difference between YLCO cashing out and getting the first and getting knocked out, maybe even bottom 4.
Peter, you can't even put enough value on the fact that they got Tiny Titans last time as well, so that's even another 30 health that was factored in. Right now, they are just absolutely bleeding out, and they're so much further away from getting a big payoff than they were in the last game as well. They are really, really struggling. On the other side of things, our second place from that game, who was overtaken at the last moment by YLCO, Bandboy riding high at the moment, coming in to the neutrals with that win streak, 98 health still intact.
Looking very, very good indeed. And I mean, certainly if you can keep yourself up towards the top there, when perhaps others might drop down, then you can pretty much push yourself towards the first place just by virtue of consistency. We'll keep an eye out, though, for Don Master, who's also on a win streak and also in that top 4. We have got a fairly stark difference in HP between, of course, everybody else and YLCO, but the bottom 4 are still a step below the top.
They are, but when you've got only 14 health separating coming into this neutral, it's not that dramatic a difference in the lobby. As you can see how those 10 to 20 health differences actually can be negated pretty quickly as we get towards the later stage of this game. What becomes very important is going to be a 3-2 when we get our secondary augment. The fact that we saw hero augment first means that it is the highest likelihood of a gold augment next. So if that comes in and maybe delivers hearts or crests, that could just change the entire complexity of this game.
Whilst the lost streak remains intact coming into that second augment choice. Of course, last time around we did see that be the big turning point. In this case, I suspect it will be a little bit calmer. As we've got the war mugs being shared around, I think we are going to start seeing many more items slammed for YLCO just because of the slightly later addition of the underground from before. He needs to keep that board just a little bit stronger and risk potentially breaking the lost streak.
I think they're going to break it here. This Spirit Shojin will fire up the spread shots, taking down a couple, but not enough. Win streak over for YLCO. Lost streak even, sorry.
I mean, that's the whole thing. You know, you've got to make those calculations as a player. Can I afford to play a weak enough board to definitely lose to everyone? Or do I not want to risk, you know, taking a really harsh loss every round? Second augment will be gold, as you said, so they shouldn't shake up things too badly.
It won't, but there could be a couple of big changes when you see things like Tome of Traits and potential Crests and Crowns coming in. This is just going to be items coming their way, but because it's a salvage, it's going to be immediately split up. This is providing a potential blue buff should they want it, but of course, more likely to see maybe this Kai'Sa getting itemized. Desperately hoping for some recurves, I think, at the moment, YLCO.
I think Salvage Bin is an incredibly good augment for YLCO with this kind of style of play, because ideally you want to really, you know, custom make your board to what it needs to be doing right now and then change everything up in the long term. So you can slam all of your items right now, make your board decently strong, and then when you get your underground cash out, completely reconfigure your items and make a completely new board.
Seeing Don Master in action here. This was the Rammus you were talking about earlier on. A Rammus who, again, is just going rolling through, tanking up so much damage and just buying time for the backline to fire out. And it's just a game of Kaisers at the moment, and it's a case of whose Kaisers firing out harder. It feels at the moment like things are going the way of YLCO, but just at the last second, Ezreal gets one last little plugs in. That was a really tight one. I did not know which way that one was going, as you might as well been able to tell by how I was talking.
Well, I think Don Master's going to be a little bit peeved about that.
I think so too.
There.
I thought they had that.
Because, yeah, they've got a threat level maximum board. They should be pretty strong, and they will be getting a bit stronger as they get more threats in, but their board looked pretty decent. YLCO now going to try and push their way back up through win streaking. But as you noted, Bamboy here from University of Durham, currently in second place with the Kai'Sa carry setup. So they have got some very big things in their future.
They've got huge things in their future. They've been win streaking in this game. They got a second in the last game, and getting that Kai'Sa augment, which we saw others missing out on as the rerolls came through, has obviously meant that they've put themselves in a position of strength. What it also means, however, is that this Kai'Sa, on the back of its win in the last game, is going to be massively contested through this lobby.
Yeah, I mean, multi-shot Kai'Sa, it's just a nightmare. We can see exactly as you said. Ben will be picking up the Kai'Sa themselves. It's notable that, you know, at least as of the previous patch, the 2-star Kai'Sa was generally enough to carry you through a pretty significant portion of the game. But for Ben, actually doesn't even have the 2-star Kai'Sa as of yet. So we could really use some more itemization for her and just some more instances of her as well.
Relian's Soul here is a big pickup for our threat player if they're able to get that this early on. Meanwhile, we're just going to be taking a little bit of a breather, a little bit of a moment, and question for you, just based on compositions that we've seen so far, is there anyone who's really caught your eye apart from maybe Bamboy at the top of things, where we look at them and go, yeah, they're going to definitely push through?
Well, I do want to take a note here about what we're seeing for Ben in brackets here. Note that Ben in brackets found the 2 Kaisers at the start of the game. Can you count for me how many Kaisers Ben in bracket has right now, nearly 2 stages into the game?
Hold on, I got this. 2.
So how many Kaisers have they found in the last...
Stop giving me this difficult math, Peter! Yeah, sounding like I'm not good at maths on a university stream. Maybe not the best look. Yes, no, they haven't been able to get a single extra one. Haven't been able to push towards that. And the very fact they weren't able to get the augment of it, which would have automatically given them that 2-star, could have meant that they were the ones right now win streaking this all the way through to a top 2 place.
They're going to have to settle for at least a pretty decent board. We can see the CC ability being spread across the team. Of course, we do know with Garen and Jana around, there's a decent amount of CC later on, even if it's not going to have the biggest impact right away. Is getting a win streak from the bottom, so Ben doing pretty well, pushing up towards the top, but Bamba, of course, remains undefeated, while YLCO takes another loss towards the bottom. Things are getting pretty spicy for our current top performer. We check in and see if they are going to cash out their undergrounds immediately or try and push deep again.
On that. You've got to risk it. I know what you were saying last time, Peter, the idea of if you feel like if you're one away from when you're going to need to take the payout, you should take it. And I feel like that's probably the situation where they are at the moment. But when you saw that potential that they could take there, I think it was 20 gold in the magnetic remover. You can't take that. You've committed so much into your game working out because you get a good underground payment, and that is not it. Jabba the Hutt was not kind to Han on that one.
Oh, lordy. I mean, yeah, this is a very, very tough situation to be in for YLCO. I mean, we saw one sort of essence of YLCO's strategy before as we check in with Nico, who is bringing the Draven into the field. So before, we didn't see the Draven with the carry augment. League of Draven means he's going to be able to get, I believe this is the right one. Yes, there we see the gold coming through. So this Draven will be able to accelerate his own growth the stronger he is.
It is the second time today we've seen a Draven carry being used, certainly in the early part of the game. This one, of course, we'll see later on as well. Unfortunately, it's probably the second time we've seen Draven be slightly underwhelming. You talked about the fact we're not seeing it used as the hacker Draven so much these days, and it's just going to stay in the corner and throw out those axes, trying to get as many crits as possible. But at the moment, I'm less than impressed with it.
I think we previously existed in a space where, you know,
Peter,
when
just,
you saw...
I really want to hear what you want to say about this, but can I just really quickly say, I'd love to know the odds on getting 2 ultimate Ezreals at this point for a level 7 on 1% chance going into Wolves. That is like practically unheard of.
I mean, I've not been in a maths class for a long time, but let's not do the
maths.
math.
I was just shocked by it. I want to hear what you want to say about Draven.
Let's say it's 1 in 10,000. I'm just kind of adding together the two numbers there. Maybe someone in the chat actually studies maths can tell us what 2 1% are together.
Love it.
But yeah, to touch back on the Draven stuff before, I don't think we've actually got a POV for the Draven, so I'll keep this relatively brief. But we're not in the same space we were before, where Draven would be the last one standing with units surrounding him because we're more melee focused. Now most people are playing front to back compositions, so Draven ends up getting focused by 3 or 4 different DPS units and then just explodes.
Just looking at the itemization YLCO was doing there, hovering whether to go this Hodge onto the Samira that's a 2-star or onto the Ezreal that's almost at 2-star, opting in the end to go to the 5-cost unit. It looks like it's paying off pretty nicely so far. This is an underground player who needs to get their payout, but also needs to not lose any more health. It's a bit of a quandary they find themselves in. They've played strong, they've rolled down heavily and leveled up to 7. It worked out on this round.
This is awkward for YLCO because you can see that he wants to actually take losses here. Playing 4 underground doesn't actually do anything for you. If you're winning, you need to be playing 5 to get an extra stack. You only get the extra stack for taking the 4. So I think YLCO is at least anticipating taking losses in the immediate future. But unfortunately, the rest of the lobby is not being very cooperative.
They're not. Ascension here picked up for JX. They're another one right down on the lower half of things at the moment. Poised at 50 health, which actually isn't too far away from even breaking up to around about 4th, but needs to start securing a few wings. This Vayne currently sitting at 2 stars, and without any more Vaynes on the bench, I do wonder a little bit whether or not it's going to be a long-term carry that actually pays off for them.
Yeah, we can see that we're getting a check from only on the Anima squad stack, so not ideally you like to have a pretty good amount of them in the bank, and it doesn't actually seem like that is the case quite yet.
No.
I mean, the Vayne is still pretty strong, but the Spirit Surgeon's letting her cast quite often, but ideally she'd have a little bit more damage to go with that to make sure that these rapid casts really hurt.
Not having an Infinity Edge or the like with it definitely will hurt. It means they're going to essentially have to wait for 15 seconds before it's even got close to the damage to rip through this line. And by that point, you can see how much the Kaiser's doing over on the other side of the Convergence. And yeah, it's not ideal for them. One thing that I'm slightly surprised about is that we are seeing the Yasuo being used as that second duelist. It's working out quite nice here. Does mean you get those stacks, but not opting into the Fiora, which is the same cost unit, means that you're not putting Oxforce in as well, which you could so easily be doing alongside, of course, the Alistair that so naturally goes in with Anima Squad.
Oh my gosh, fantastic. And you can see, Oli is a master tier player, and even at any level of TFT, you're going to have players who are playing with comps they're less familiar with. Presumably that is the case here for Only, that they're not as confident with the spread shot composition, but it's just the composition that has presented itself to them. So they're still making their changes, and I think exactly as you said, that's why we're seeing this be a slightly less than optimal board, just because Only is playing whatever shows up rather than the ideal situation.
Definitely, and don't get me wrong here, Peter. These players are considerably higher elo than I am. The LP gains they've got dwarf mine. However, I'm out there. I play a good chunk of games myself, and so I like to give my own little thoughts on it from time to time.
I mean, if we can't, talk down our players' decisions from the safety of the commentary desk, we don't even want to get into a lobby with them because we'd be proven wrong immediately. But from here, we could be right. You never know.
You never know. In hyper roll, I reckon I can go with the best of them. But in a standard rank game, I'm willing to accept that I'd be taking an 8th in this lobby right now. And someone who's probably not going to be taking an 8th in this lobby is the individual we're following right now, Rabbit Fufu. They're win streaking coming into this carousel. They've got themselves a good chunk of health. They've got themselves up to 7, which is pretty much what everybody in the game at this point is on, I believe.
Yeah, and I'm interested to see how this is going for Rabbit, because we checked with them before. They were running the mascot composition, and we can see from the trait display at the side, they've got themselves up to a pretty decent setup here. They've got Exiles, they've got Last Stand as well, which is really fascinating. This is looking like a pretty solid board. And unless I miss my guess, actually, I think we might be missing out on a couple of Exile shields here for Rabbit. This is where I start to doubt myself as to whether or not I'm recognizing the right augment.
It's a good question. I will leave that one to you to have a little workout as I take a moment to talk about the fact they've been able to get their hands on the Jin early on, which has been able to be itemized significantly, excellently, frankly, on the back of that last carousel. They got pretty much just what they wanted, opting into not burning this tier straight into a redemption on the Alistair this time round, instead hoping that on the back of the Reliant Soul they may be able to get something a little bit more useful for the Vex to keep the damage output coming from there. Right now they're struggling to eat through this 3-star Fiora. Maybe this is part of the reason why we're not seeing the Fiora in the Anima Squad comp from earlier on. The fact that all of them are just gone out of the pool straight over to Hudson, who's doing everything they can to make life difficult for these Rift Walkers, but just not doing anywhere near enough.
I mean, this is such a good setup for Rabbit here. Even if, just double check, they are missing out on a couple of...
Oh my god, Hench, I love this. Massive shout out to Hench, who has dropped us the fact there is a 0.06% chance of having 2 Ez rolls in 4 rolls. So, you know what? Thank you so much, Hench. That's genuinely made my day.
There we go. I think Rabbit's done a little bit of reconfiguring. Sorry, I tend to not prefer to point out these tiny things that are going on with what the players are doing, just because there's usually some kind of reason for it. I think maybe, there's a lot to think about at this point for Rabbit, who's kind of quite far off of hitting the Vex 3, which would really be part of the win condition. But fortunately, on the other side for Only, they are also quite far away from hitting Vayne 3 as well.
They are, and it's been a little bit tricky for them to get towards any real point of power. We talked about it last time we were looking at their board, and now we can see the struggles it's having. And one more shot from the Vex through the middle of this board will be enough. In fact, it doesn't even have to be used because the Zac just attaches itself. Meanwhile, Jinx will try to do all they can to negate the damage coming in, but that's going to be JX right down at the bottom of this lobby on the back of that loss, alongside Hudson, who's just a whiff away from disaster.
I mean, that's the only good news for Only right now, is that Hudson is very likely to go out ahead of them. Do bear in mind, of course, Hudson finished out 7th in the first game. We were hoping they were going to be able to bring their duelist comp to a strong finish, but unfortunately, does not seem like it's going to be happening right now. As apologies, we're having a little bit of a hiccup with our feeds, but Bamboy, again, a player we're looking for big things from this game, has started to slow down a little bit, and perhaps like some of our other players, playing a contested line is slowing down the chance to build together that really excessive late game board.
We did question, especially with the Kaisers, if there were so many people in this lobby that were going to be taking them on the back of the success of YLCO in the last lobby, that maybe it would be proven issue for any of them to go all the way and win. The fact that we've got these 2-star Kaisers still right up towards the top of the table, even though they're not getting anywhere near the 3-star, says a lot about the strength of the unit at the moment, especially here with its augment intact.
I suppose the good news for Bamboy is that he's managed to maintain his economy getting to this point. So that's at least, you know, you at least can do some rolling here on level 8. You don't have to rush up. Stargarden, I think, is going to be added to a little bit, but this isn't quite the final board. Giant Slayer coming in, and a Gargoyles as well. I think Bamboy is about to turn the corner here, and it's going to be at the expense of Hudson.
Hudson, who's basically got this 2-star Fury and a load of duelists firing off the backline to try and keep themselves alive in this game. Unfortunately, it's going to take a monster effort, and with the misfortune bullet time rinsing their backline, unfortunately, Monster will only be the sponsor of our stream, not the effort that is put out by these champions.
Hudson is gone. Only is gone as well. We're down to our top 6 of YLCO, putting out a win streak in the middle of the pack. So apparently, we are back to what we saw in game number 1 in terms of roughly where we were at stage 5. The only real question is whether the rest of this lobby is strong enough to stop YLCO from swooping through and taking first again.
We're going to find out very, very soon. But before we do, as you just saw flashed on the screen there during transition, Monster Energy are our sponsors for this stream. We're very, very grateful to them. And also, they are kindly helping us do a great giveaway for you out there in Twitch chat. If you're interested in entering, just type Monster Energy Drop into Twitch chat. Enters you in with a chance to win that fantastic prize of some Monster Energy, winging its way right to you. Have to be 18 or older to enter.
For Ben, things are looking pretty dire, taking a pretty heavy loss there, which puts him down on a similar HP to Nick. But Nick has got the 3-star Draven in play. So in terms of which of these two players I prefer to be, Nick is on the up and up, hits a 3-star Wukong as well. I think the Draven is coming fully online.
It is absolutely humongous, as you saw in that last game. Well, I'll touch on that in a minute, just because I quickly need to correct myself. My apologies. I said Monster Energy Drop is what you'd like to type in. Undo that quickly and take it out of Twitch chat. You can do that. I'm sure you can. Just put Monster Drop in. Monster Drop will get you entered into the competition, in with a chance of winning one of our 4 prizes tonight. One, I believe, was given away during the first game. We'll do another one during this one, and then 2 more rounds tonight, Peter, at the end of which we will know who our champion is for this series.
We check in with Don and the threat level maximum board. We can see that this board has come together pretty nicely. We've got Ramos there leading the charge with a massive Aurelian Soul in the backside, as Ben takes a pretty heavy hit. They're in major, major trouble and seem lined up to be our next elimination.
Meanwhile, it's going to be that Draven finding the whirling death, and the only JX already having had their death as well. Benin is going to have their first choice of what the hell to get their hands on here. Is there anything at all that you feel could help save them?
Oh boy, I mean, I think, getting a stronger front line is definitely something. We can see right now the front line is not good for Ben at all. So, the Garen could provide a little bit more time for the Kaiser to stack up. The itemization on the Kaiser is good, but she doesn't have anything, which is helping her cast faster, just raw damage. So she needs time to get up to full capacity. Draven? Draven. I've got Draven on the brain, but Nico coming in at 2-star is pretty major. We've got the Neela, who's going to be a little bit tanky in the front line. I don't know about the Urgot, but I suppose at this point, Ben's Brackets is playing for the kind of game where Urgot gets a big cash out at this point and restarts Ben's economy.
Apologies there, Peter. I had a little disconnect and missed what you were just saying, but I think I can hear you all good now. And
Hello, hello.
What a time to be back as well, because this game is balanced on a knife's edge for some of these top players. And at the moment, it's been in brackets trying to avoid elimination, doing everything they can, firing out with the Kai'Sa, having to deal with the Jhin in the backline. And still, the damage hasn't turned towards these two carries, the Vex, the Jhin, both staying alive. Jhin is gone. Vex, the next target. And Kai'Sa is able to hang in there. Rabbit Fufu takes a shot to the heart.
We do have a direct quote from Ben in brackets. If I win, it'll be sheer luck. Now that's the attitude of a player who's a real winner, if I've ever heard one. And Ben's brackets there, managing to hold on from the University of East Anglia. Cool as a cucumber.
I'll tell you, I was expecting something like really deep and profound there, but considering they've got the giraffe there for support, I'm assuming that's like an emotional support giraffe in the background. They're doing all right. They put out a second Kai'Sa here. If one Kai'Sa can do lots of damage, then surely tons of damage going to be coming now.
I like that the Kaisers are on the same side here, because the Kaisers will stack when they hit the target. So it is effectively another way to push your Kaiser damage. As well, we've also got the CC immunity coming in from the augment from Ben. So up against Fanboy, who is at level 9, which is the 2-star Kaiser, they've got a tiny chance of holding on, but it's very, very tight to the very end. And no, they will go no further.
Unfortunately, the chance was a slim one, and we are going to see the complete luck not quite happening for Benin on this one. They will go out, and it will take us through to Morgana, through to a real critical stage, because we have 5 players left, with 2 of them just separated by 1 hit point.
Wow, there could not be a more YLCO moment than being here at 9 HP and having 87 gold in the bank. Oh, jeez.
Yeah, they're going to use so much of that gold to level. Almost certainly we'll see them going all the way to 9 on the back of the Morgana round. The question is, what unit are we going to see put in next? The Ezreals that we see on the bench, they're already out there in terms of getting parallel activated. So we'll just see what is going to be that last unit. There'll be a little bit of a reroll, I'm sure. Mordekaiser could be the one. Urgot's going to get picked up as well. I think they might possibly be fishing for more Cinders at the moment, hoping to hit it the 2-star. They're going to get one more. It's not going to be enough, though.
Well, has a chance to throw in the 2-star Echo. That's no mean defeat. I think we
Well,
might be looking at the Syndra? No. Apparently they've got something very specific here, and I don't know if it's being found. Oh, there's a 2-star Israel. And we've got, of course, the one last item coming in.
Yeah, and Fiddlesticks is going to get put out onto the front line as well. That was the extra unit in the end. Burning through the entirety of the bench, entirety of the econ, just to try and get this ultimate Ezreal. Was it ultimately a good decision? True Shot Barrage will rinse through the back, through that front line. And now it all comes down to the Kaiser, as so many times it has before. But now they've got to do a mighty amount of work all on their lonesome. They haven't got what it takes. YLCO hangs in there. And Nick does as well.
Against the ghost of Fanboy, yeah. Nick holding on almost the same amount of HP. Rabbit is barely above. We've got 2, Fanboy and Don, who both have 30, 40 HP, but everybody else is 1 round from dead.
Not a single win streak to be spoken of either. All of these players are trading wins and losses back and forth. This is very much anyone's game. Fanboy and Don obviously in the driver's seat as a result of having that extra little bit of health to play with. And this is where having those early win streaks and not losing out so much, as we've seen from YLCO, just gives you that extra little bit of security coming towards the late game. This could be a death match here, as we are going to see what I believe is Nick against YLCO. That 3-star Malphite at the front, absorbing a lot of this kind of damage as Fiddlesticks gets activated really, really early without having absorbed any souls. On the backside, we do see that Draven, 3-starred as it has been for some time, is throwing out absolutely absurd damage. There is a second Fiddle to activate as well. That one will come in. It will get a fear. Will it buy a bit of extra time for the Kai'Sa? No, it won't. One more crit hits the soul. Ultimate Ezreal is the last standing bastion. Samira tries to do what they can, but YLCO will not repeat and get a 5th win in a row, instead dropping out in 5th themselves.
All right, that's some pretty big news for everybody else in the competition. The win streak comes to a screeching halt. I think in this case, YLCO just could not help himself. He always had to play the very tail end. Rabbit Fufu, see here, never managed to hit the Vex 3, but the rest of the board's looking pretty solid.
Look at that board. That is a back line. RFC Leona just going to be swapped around a little bit for where the Urgot is, but still going to be getting that Exile Shield. The only Exile Shield not going down will be for Pyke and Vex in the corner, but that shouldn't matter too much considering who's going to be absorbing the brunt of the damage early on. Jhin firing from the back line. It all comes down to Jhin versus Vex for damage on this one. Leona will get a first ultimate out. The Solar Flare will target onto... just waiting on this. Yes, crucially onto one of the chunky, healthy targets. That will rinse through, I believe, what was an Echo in a former life. Kai'Sa still going relatively untouched at the top left of your screen. Finally gets to turn attention onto Vex. Is going to get through one health bar and now manages to redirect their focus onto the Jhin, who won't last any longer. Rabbit Foo. Oh, hanging in with one health. The same can also be said for Nick. Still in there on 8, as is Don. It's just Bandboy running away with this lobby now.
Yeah, the last stand kicking in there. I've never been a fan of the Organ myself, but in this case, it does get away with just an extra place put in. As a Riftwalker emblem gets put up here. So this is really interesting. We could be seeing this used to pump the health of the Zac further, or just to get rid of the Pyke and mean that you don't have to play it anymore. Looks like it's going to be the latter. This board is pretty damn good. Ideally, when you've got the last stand, you want to have multiple different units that are going to really benefit from all these bonus stats, the Omni Vamp and the defensive stats. This front line is good. The Leona is good as well. But the most of the work here is going to be done by Jhin in that corner.
Yeah, Jin's going to have to put out the majority of the damage. To keep your eyes onto where the Solar Flare comes out of Leona, because which unit they're removing is going to be absolutely critical. This is going to be a death match now, as we see Rabbit Fufu trying to stop Nick from getting a third place or even higher that maybe they feel they deserve. Jhin firing down, taking out a couple of units early on. The Solar Flare does not target onto the 3-star Lee Sin, who's hanging around for a while still. Draven managing to chip away at a few units from the back, manages to finally get the Zac out of play, but isn't able to throw the Whirling Death out quite quickly enough. Now it becomes the straight out 1v1, but Fiddle absorbs some of the damage, and that buys enough time for Rabbit Fufu. And is that last stand for Nick as well?
It certainly looked like it, but yes, it is. Oh my gosh, we've got 2. Okay, maybe in a world where everybody takes last stand, it's okay for that to happen. But I mean, we were looking at a situation there where Rabbit was barely able to beat the Draven before last stand kicked in. Now that board has just become a step stronger. But we've also got to worry. We've got 2 last stand players, but we've also got Bandboy, who's still on 43 HP and still win streaking.
Peter, spare a thought for Don Master going out in 4th. Because of those 2 last stands, they would have taken 2nd otherwise.
I mean, Don did do pretty well in the previous game getting a 3rd, but for our 3 remaining players, Bandboy's definitely the best position to take over the competition. Now YLCO has dropped, or presumably going to be dropping below 1st place and opening up room for Bandboy if he can get a 1st.
Misfortune finally finding their first bullet time of this fight. It's of course all about what damage Kai'Sa can do down, and I don't think the Ghost is getting a win on this occasion, keeping Rabbit Fufu well and truly alive on that last stand. Meanwhile, Nick with this Draven now having the optimized stats, trying to fight up against Kai'Sa, but Kai'Sa has more luck in this battle than she did as a Ghost. And that's going to leave us with a top 2.
I mean, this is the problem. Kai'Sa is spec'd for maximum single target damage, and when all of your eggs in one basket as they are with the Draven, it's just not gonna ever be a good matchup. Bear in mind again, wait, hold on a second. A 3-star Garen just arrived. Forget everything we could ever talk about for the rest of the game.
Yeah. We're done, right? We can cut to break?
Yeah, I think pretty much. Oh my gosh. Yeah, Bandboy from the University of Durham. I mean, that's incredibly impressive. It's not exactly a low priority unit you managed to 3-star there in the Garen. It's a unit that's in most people's compositions.
I can honestly say I'm not entirely convinced I've actually seen a 3-star Garen before what will be this next PvP fight. Unfortunately, Rabbit Fufu, on their last stand, they fought valiantly. They've shown that they could beat the Ghost of Bandboy in the last round. Unfortunately, now they're going to have to beat Ghost squared, as we are going to see the Garen 3-star entering the fray. There it is on the front line, fully itemized, of course. Hasn't got the Bloodthirster, so there's a slight change on it, but it's going to be so damn tanky that Jhin will take a full year to eat through that unit.
Gosh, I'm a little sad that Verdon's threats comp didn't get any further than this. I mean, what a world we live in right now. for Don in particular. You know, oh my gosh, for Fanboy, you know, that we've got a post-nerf Kaiser, and it's still ultimately the strongest thing in the entire lobby. Not by a small margin, but by a major margin. Hitting 3-star Draper might end the game, but it's a consequence of everything that came before, not the cause of it.
Yeah, getting that Garen has proved to be decisive. One thing that could have changed things is if the Solar Flare had been able to pick onto the Garen, maybe it could have removed that crucial unit, but that's what ifs. We don't deal with ifs and buts here. It is simply as declared that Fanboy takes that lobby in convincing fashion. And with YLCO dropping out in 5th, that's going to mean that after our small break in a moment, Peter, when we do eventually come back and look at the scoreboard, it's going to look mighty different.
All right, general friends. So as Greyheart said, we will be heading to break. We have only got 4 games today, so we have got half of them done. And currently, Fanboy is looking to be ahead of the pack. But if you've got any other favorites, do let us know in the chat. We'll catch you in a few minutes' time as we bring you the back half of the competition.
Come with us. The new generation. The next level. Sending it big.
You're in for a good run. Let's go.
Come with us to the track, to the trails, to the slopes, to the surf, to the fight, to the race.
Look at this!
To the 4 a.m. starts, training harder, pushing further, hitting back, hard. To the fans, to the followers, and the haters. Come with us to the blood, to the sweat, and the broken bones. You rehab. We never quit. We never give up. We take control. To the world titles. To the world's first. The world's best. Come with us. We're just getting started.
It's going to be so much fun. I promise you.
Let's go!
Monster Black.
Monster Blade!
Nice.
Monster Blade!
Monster Black.
That right there, Monster plays of the week.
Okay.
Monster Energy is doing a monster site giveaway.
NSE stay-at-home series.
Supported by Monster Energy.
Good morning, crack student gamers, and welcome to the British University Esports Championship Spring 2022. It's been a long time coming, and we're now live from Insomnia. We're back bigger than ever. We have so much going on here.
It's a place for all competitive gamers to come along. Even if you're not amazing, you can still take part, which is really nice, and you meet so many different students from different unis. It's just really nice, like a fun place to be.
And the NSE, by being at Insomnia, is really amazing. Especially a small, isolated university like Oxford, it's great to meet other students who are into esports.
So we've got a spectator area where the student communities come and they're meeting up for the first time in probably 2 years, getting to watch the finals, and then we've also got the teams on stage playing against each other. And then also we've got a student LAN as well, as kind of like a mini LAN in a wider bring your own computer over the weekend. Super grateful for our sponsors. Our headline partner is Intel. We're also partnered with Barclays, Monster Energy, providing loads of Monster Energy to keep everyone fueled over the weekend. PT Specialist, Special Effects, and we're also partnered with Bucks as well.
Everyone in the university scene is so welcoming and so lovely. You don't see people like this anywhere else, like in a community together. And it's just all about creating those connections with different people, and it's just really amazing.
Welcome back, everyone, to NSE Stay at Home, brought to you by Monster Energy. We are in our last 2 games of the day, and Stan, we did get ourselves a little bit of a surprising turn of events in our previous game, as our top current frontrunner took a little bit of a stumble.
Yeah, sometimes karma turns around and bites you, and that's what happened with the Underground not working out for YLCO this time. We'll see in a little moment what that means for our standings. And in the end, it was yet again a Kaiser win, though. So we're still seeing that Kaiser is absolutely dominant, especially for Bandboy up there at the top of the table.
YLCO will have to settle for second right now. It's being tied there with Rabbit Fufu of the University of York. We can see that the rest, certainly the mid of the table, is actually pretty close together. Unfortunately for Hudson, things have not been going so well, neither for Ben and Brackets as well. Though we did see in that previous game, things could have been different. Unfortunately, they just weren't this time.
They really could, and unfortunately, it does mean that for those players near the bottom of the table, with only 2 rounds remaining to claw back, it's going to be very, very difficult for them to hit up towards, certainly towards first place, even towards second and third. But, you know, full kudos for them, the fact they keep trying, they keep battling away. YLCO now has a lot of work to do themselves to try and pull back what is quite a big margin, and the results for Bandboy now, their fate is very much in their own hands.
Yeah, I mean, very, very well navigated so far. I'm really interested to see what Rabbit and Don Master specifically do in this game, because we have already established that having the Kaiser contested doesn't necessarily make an enormous amount of difference in how well that competition does longer term. You can just kind of focus different parts of the competition rather than necessarily being, if you don't hit Kaiser 3, then your board is done, which maybe would have been the case in previous sets. But right now, it seems to be so very, very reliable. Maybe if we get a different set of organs this time around, we'll see something a little different.
That kind of feels a lot like how we've been talking about LeBlanc for the last month or so, Peter. The idea that even if you're not 3-starring it, just the fact that you've got it there as an item holder and it's doing decent work is enough. In that last one, Bandboy didn't really even have a secondary carry that was doing the heavy lifting in that. It was still very much the Kaiser that was rinsing through. Yes, by the end of things, they had the 3-star Garen that provided an incredible tanky front line and just meant Kaiser had, an infinity to help the rest of her team win the round. But it's just, for me, the main shock there is that we didn't even see secondary carry up against teams that had secondary and even tertiary carry still winning.
I just think the raw power of the competition is just too far off the charts. We looked at the numbers in terms of what Kaiser is being dropped down in nerfs as of the most latest patch. And I think it's a little deceptive because her number goes down, but in terms of a proportion of her overall damage, because she just scales differently than other carries. She doesn't cast a spell in a traditional way. She's just raw DPS. It's not as big of a drop as you might expect just looking at the raw numbers.
I think we're just about ready to get into our third round of play. Going to be able to jump back into that one, see how things pan out. We, of course, will be keeping our eyes on how Bandboy is doing, whether they continue to win streak. They like to go aggressive quite early on, keep plenty of health coming towards that late game. It's certainly been working out for them really, really well. And, of course, we've got to keep our eyes on some of the other people in the field there, because when we looked at the leaderboard, your players like YLCO, like Rabbit Fufu, Don Masters, who are all in and around the right number of points, could all still push through and take it. So it's still going to be a close race.
I mean, in terms of what we've been seeing so far, we have been fairly consistent. I'm a little disappointed in the the comps we saw in that previous game, which were a little bit more out of the way, didn't do maybe a little bit better. I mean, to be fair though, I mean, the Vex comp did pretty well, the Draven comp did pretty well. It was just that the overwhelming power there for Bamboy was just a little too much.
It was, and at the end, it just meant that they ran away with the lobby. What did you think? We only got to see it once. What did you think of the 3-star, Garen?
I actually didn't think it was that impressive, honestly. Yeah. There's some 3-star forecasts that just end the game immediately. In the case there, we just sort of wandering around the field for a while. It's, ultimately Garen, I think, is a stun bot unless you're going to be going for the carry augment version of him. So, if anything, I believe for Bamboy, it was more of a flex, just showing that he could do that rather than he had any need to do so whatsoever.
Really fun for us to see as well. We talked about the itemization on it, and the fact that it was just full tank meant that, as you say, basically undying stun bot. I still would love to know what would have happened had Leona's solar flare targeted there. It could have maybe turned that entire round on its head, but it's not going to happen every game. There was so much health that Bamboy was working with that win was well and truly secured. Even before the point where we saw it was kind of one of those ones where second place was dead before they knew they were dead.
I mean, looking across some of the other compositions from that previous game as well, I mean, YLCO, I think, we were kind of able to cover it relatively well in the game itself. Try to follow the same path as before. I think maybe took more risks than were strictly necessary to try to keep that first streak going, because admittedly, it was a very impressive first place streak, but I think if YLCO had played just a little bit more conservatively, he could easily have taken a top 4.
I think it shows that they didn't gain enough from the underground payout as well. We saw one particularly poor offering from the underground payout. We didn't actually see the one that they took in the end, but it can't have been that impressive when we saw the items that were on display and what they were able to achieve with their late game board. And so it was very much sort of the coin came down tails for them. And this game, not so impressive, not so outstanding, but we can't take away from the fact that across 2 days of play, they won 4 games of TFT against decent, not just decent, great competition. So, I expect to see them bounce back.
Oh, for sure. I mean, there's not a world in which I would remotely count out YLCO. Definitely coming in as a favorite for today. But I mean, I'm grateful that for our players, we are seeing a few of the different choices. We mentioned, of course, already the Draven and the Vex comp, which again wasn't a fully online Vex composition because it was having to pivot more into a Jin style. Don Master, of course, also bringing out the threats and doing some pretty good work for them as well. So we have got a lot of players at this point still in a good position to try and bounce back, even if they have to bring out something a little bit unusual for them.
Peter, we're into game, and straight away we're seeing one of my least favorite things, which is a carousel filled with just 3 types of item. You're immediately having to choose from your starting points, are you going Giant's Belt, Tier, or Crit? And it's sort of, I don't know, I feel like it doesn't open up so many early opportunities of different things that can happen through the lobby.
Oh, I'm not a massive fan of it either, but it's one of those things that is going to be in there for the time being. Is, oh my gosh. All right, well, talk about, last time around we saw the 2 Kaisers being dropped immediately. Now we've seen most of an early threat board being dropped here from Rabbit. I think this is going to be a great chance to be able to start strong and keep those points flowing in.
They're going to bin off the Rammus, but the fact they've hit the 2-star Nasus already, they obviously have an idea of what they're going to be looking towards, and Rammus is not a part of it. Though I'm a little surprised by that myself. It feels like it's such a strong early tanky unit, but obviously Rabbit Fufu does not feel the same. Going to keep the Morgana around for now, though.
I think people have kind of gotten into the reflex of just chuck Rammus in the bin because he doesn't do anything. I mean, that's, I think, reflected that in the buff he got, an extra 0.25 second stun on an AoE. That's a pretty big number to be able to throw into a otherwise, reasonably solid unit. And I think that's reflecting how little time Rammus is getting in the sun.
That makes a lot of sense. As we move away there from Rabbit Fufu, it did look like we were setting up towards some kind of potentially renegade play. Of course, Lucian is something that's had a fair, significant number of changes, as we see a Gadgeting board here for JX, and they in turn shows a little bit of what Bamboy's doing.
And thank you. Rabbit Fufu actually dropped into the chat to let us know, which I think we missed when the lobby first came in, because I think we probably got so excited just by the possibility of seeing the Garen that in the last round, the Garen actually got sent up in the air by the Zephyr. But anyway, around it, we've got our first augments coming in, so we'll get to see our players make those choices. We've got a chance for our Oxforce crest from the beginning, but no gadgeting crest, which I'm sure is what he was hoping for.
Yeah, even went into a reroll for it as well. Of course, with your gold augments, it's the most likely thing that you're going to see in terms of a first augment leads to most likely the hero or gold after that as well. So this could be quite a stacked board that we get to see for these various teams, because it's one thing to get stat boards courtesy of the champions, courtesy of the itemization you're able to develop. It's another thing when you're just handed it on a plate courtesy of the nice augmentation.
Yeah, well, only this is looking pretty decent so far. The Oxforce staying in place. As we do see, we've got an Infinity player already in the mix. Now, we do know the Infinity Team 7 has been reduced in power by a significant amount, but it's still going to be a very, very popular composition.
It's one of those things that it's tough to get to, so you can never strip it down that dramatically. And still early on, just being able to get Infinity Team 3 out, able to get that extra unit, you show the damage it's got there, and JX is going to fall to Nick as a result.
Yeah, I mean, very solid start here for Nick, who is a player who does need to make up some amount of ground. Very much a middle-of-the-pack player. It's actually doing pretty well, considering that Nick came into the tournament as the 8th place player out of the 8 who come in and play on the second day. So expectations aren't the highest necessarily, but hopefully they'll be able to surprise us.
I didn't take enough time, admittedly, to actually have a look at exactly who... exactly what the sort of the points knockup was, whether there were any what am I looking for, tiebreakers or the like for them to be able to get in that 8th position. But you've got to assume that even the fact that they've been able to outlast a significant number of people to get onto day 2 means that they've shown a certain amount of class, and that's something that has been reflected really, really well through our first couple of games here, and certainly at the start of this game as well.
I mean, it's absolutely, it's a discovery process, particularly for players playing university, getting their first chance to potentially first chance to play it on a stream, and have that weight of expectations, to have their friends in the chat, hopefully cheering them on, hopefully not making fun of them if anything goes wrong. Perhaps it's possible to do both things.
I think it is. I think obviously it's different for different people, but there's a certain amount of what I think could be seen as playful fun, as long as it's, as you say, done in the right way, Peter. And I think that there's a lot of these players who are able to do that amongst themselves. I've certainly seen it in esports to a significant level, players who have competed, whether it be in university esports or anywhere else. And if you're not able to have that little bit of fun with your teammates, then fair enough, but equally it takes some of the fun.
Yeah, it's very. I think it's definitely one of those things that's going to be very different for different people.
Of course, yeah.
Whilst having a decent early start, but it looks like we have got ourselves a pretty solid and interesting alternative option becoming here. We've got combat training coming in for Bandboy, but not with the units you'd expect to see it with.
No, it's going to be a Hextech Gunblade Kaiser. We know how much they love to play Kaiser, and the fact it's had good results results today, but it's not going to have a good result here, as the Brawlers are tanky enough to just absolutely just eviscerate that front line in the end and get onto the back line too quickly.
I don't know if you can spot... Oh, I missed their name just as they came through, but that looks like a very solid Brawler setup we've got developing there. We do know that one of the small changes which have come into this patch is that the Brawlers are just going to be that little bit stronger. And with the setup they've got there, we can expect to see that there's going to be Jax in our future, and probably Warwick as well.
Also, just going back to the carousel, which we were seeing briefly there, my eyes were drawn to the fact that 2 of our summoners here were able to get their hands on recurve tier as the items of choice, hovering over their new champions, and just being able to instantly pick up Kaiser's key component. I mean, that's just a win on any front, right?
I'm really curious as to where this is going with Bandboy. I mean, it's not exactly a bad thing necessarily to have some extra AD in there, but it's certainly not what you would expect. Maybe my guess would be that Bandboy had something else in mind initially, but found the right units to put together an early Kaiser board. Maybe they just run with it and say, combat training is just a little bit of extra damage on the side. The unit quality is good enough.
I think you're completely right with your view on that one. Of course, we could be proved wrong. There could be some kind of swap around in the near future. But the longer we see this Kai'Sa stick around, the more likely it is this is going to be the late game drive that is going to be going in for Banboy. We've just seen Kai'Sa win 2 lobbies in a row, so why wouldn't you do that when the opportunity is presented? Kai'Sa now with the static shiv in tow, able to rip through the health bars a lot quicker, left in this 1v1 up against the Sivir, and Kai'Sa does what Kai'Sa does best and wins.
I mean, all's fair there. The Kai'Sa is doing a lot of auto attacking, and that will reflect in the hits being laid out. So a pretty. Apparently it's a misclick. Amazing. No, I refuse to believe that. I believe we are in the midst of a brave new meta emerging here, and players are not just, in a very important third game, throwing caution to the wind with their augments.
Oh, well, you know what? If they're listening in, then maybe at some point they're going to give us a little bit whether I'm pronouncing Banboy, whether it's Banboy or Barnboy. But either way, misclick apparently on the augment, but not hurting them too much as they were able to get good itemization on towards the Kai'Sa. Maybe it just gives them a little bit the benefit later on. We're going to see them in battle now up against the Oni JX.
You can see Oli immediately walking over to the combat training, checking the Kai'Sa and saying, "Was there some sort of AD scaling which I missed somewhere?"
Narrator, there was not. And,
I mean, right now, the Kai'Sa's putting up a pretty decent fight, but when we noticed before, Gnar made it out of the recent round of almost meta-wide nerfs with a relatively light touch. He doesn't rely so much on the hacker omnivamp, which has now disappeared for non-hackers. So I think longer term, this Gadgeting board could be looking pretty threatening.
I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes. We spoke earlier on about the fact that we weren't seeing it at all in our first lobby. We didn't see it in the second either. Finally getting to see it online and also being itemized. For me, this is a lot of fun. And I'm genuinely looking forward to see where it goes. The fact we've already got this pike in means we are going to still be seeing a hacker route coming through later on as the LeBlanc, maybe the Shen's picked up. But it's, it's going to be fun to see just how much this Gnar is able to do, and whether we're going to see that fabled, even is the word I was looking for there, fabled Gnar 3-star comes through if it's just not contested.
I mean, for Gnar, it was always about the access more than the Omnivamp anyway. I mean, very likely it's going to end up building a Bloodthirster on
I was about to say, that's the items that have just come through as well.
Oh yeah, well there we go. And we've even now got a fully itemized Gnar just to wander up and smack people. Yep. He really does want to have access really to the backline carries, but what we've got right now is pretty solid and keeping only above the midline right now.
And a super early Garen too, just to get that extra defender out to go alongside your Poppy means that tank line's just become, that front line's just become so much more tanky, buying the extra time. Gnar's not going to be jumping into the back line quite as quickly as you would hope, because of course you haven't got that hacker activated just yet, but even so it's going to have the opportunity to do a lot. The question is, how many units is it going to catch with its Gnar in a moment?
So we get to check in with Hudson actually. Of course, the scoped weapons, I was drawing a blank on the name of the augment before. That's the one which is giving the extra range to the Jack. So this should be a pretty darn good composition. Of course, we know that the Gnar setup here is pretty ridiculous, but it's actually going to be still relatively close on the actual round itself.
But it was one last Gnar into the wall that meant the death of the LeBlanc, who was doing everything they could in the corner. Not going to see that one too heavily itemized, I don't think, in this game. Interesting options. Rich Get Richer is going to be the pickup coming in for Ben in brackets.
A small note on the previous match that we saw, we mentioned the whole idea of not jumping into backlines, and in this case, in our previous lobbies, people were pretty free with their backlines, saying, you know what, there's no hackers here, we can just build all the backlines we want. Gnar makes that very much not the case, and you can't clump in the same way that you could against LeBlanc, because Gnar does that area of effect damage. The one way you can really avoid getting hit too hard by the Gnar is by having carries who are in themselves tanks. And that's why I love seeing Brawler in this particular lobby.
Well, we'll keep our eyes focused on, I believe, was it Hudson who's rocking the Brawlers this time round? See how they get on. Meanwhile, down the bottom of the table, yet again, YLCO, 67 health. Took a long time getting into Underground again, so we'll be waiting for that payout for a considerable amount of time unless they're offered something really, really juicy. Meanwhile, just above them, it is going to be Ben in brackets, who we've just seen taking Rich Get Richer. It's going to stick up at 60 gold at the moment, having invested towards getting towards level 6. Still taking significant chunks of damage, and their board just feels like it's quite far behind everybody else's at the moment.
It's a bit unfortunate Ben decided to build the heavy defender lineup going up against Don Master with the Spell Slinger board is always going to be a pretty rough time. But I do want to take a chance to point out Nick, who is currently on a win streak up at the top, also apparently building some sort of Infinity board. Really impressive run to get to almost halfway through stage 3.
Interesting decisions have to be made here for Ben in brackets, whether they're going to actually try and commit to a full-on mecha or not. You can see the decision being made. They're going to drop out of having 4 defender as a result just to try and get the right units in. They're not going to optimize actually using the mech itself in this fight.
Oh, that's kind of interesting. Looking to just keep as many bodies on the board as possible. I think right now, for Ben's brackets, there's a big choice they've got to make here as to how they want to approach the rest of this game, because they've got money in the bank. They've got a good loss streak as well. I mean, they're still continuing to sack off more and more HP to keep that loss streak in place, which to me suggests we're going to be seeing them take a heavy run up the levels using this gold, because otherwise you've sacrificed your HP for nothing.
YLCO actually just ended their own personal loss streak, so whether or not they've been able to find a cash out or not, I guess we'll find out fairly soon. Meanwhile, coming in towards this carousel, we've got 2 heavy win streakers, Nick and Rabbit Fufu, both still above 90 health.
They're looking really, really good indeed. I mean, Ben Brackets does have the rich get richer. We'll check in with YLCO and see what they're up to in a little bit and see if we've got another underground situation developing, because, of course, that's what we would expect. Based on what we've seen so far, I think the confounding factor here is that Ben is taking so many losses already. It's hard to have 2 loss-streaking players going.
I want to see what this means for Nick. They were able to get their hands on the brawler, on the spatula there, and for our brawler player, all of a sudden to be able to just essentially make themselves a crest of their choosing, or maybe even be able to get tacticians later on in the game. Real potential game changer. We're only a few rounds away from our final augment, which we know will be either hero or gold, with higher percentage being towards a hero augment. And suddenly, if we start getting these 4 or 5 cost units coming in, bringing their augments to the table as well, Nick can cap out so heavily here.
Oh boy, I mean, YLCO though has got a chance to play some more traditional TFT. The misfortune with the Star Guardian emblem is already in play here in stage 3. This is one of the most obscene boards you can put together, particularly if you can get the Spirit Shojin on the misfortune. This should just be casting again and again and again, as long as the front line stands.
As long as the front line stands. Meanwhile, Kaiser, yet again, we've seen this a few times, battling bravely, but losing out, and this is not looking good for YLCO. Could be a second poor result in a row if this trend continues.
YLCO, I think probably going to be a little confused at this point as to why things aren't going a little bit better than expected, but yeah, just on the 1-star, Kaiser right now does have the ability to potentially shove some items onto the misfortune, but I would be surprised. The big problem for YLCO is a lack of money, a lack of streak, and a lack of 2 stars.
So I'm just trying to get my head around where they could go to be able to get Star Guardian 6 out here. Obviously, there's the potential cheap purchase of a Lux. Other than that, it's just waiting on the Echo and the Syndra, and neither of them are forthcoming at this exact moment.
No, and I don't
see
think
that Vi holding onto the items for the Echo.
I don't think things are going to get better in the immediate future, as that was a really nice shroud as well, right across. Particularly the misfortune is going to take a long, long time to cast.
So long.
YLCO, I think a second loss streak is on the cards.
So despite having got that Star Guardian emblem, the mana gain is so slow for Misfortune, but the first bullet time is so effective, and with Kaiser shredding from the backline, this is going to be a win for YLCO, negating that potential loss streak you were talking about.
Yeah, there's still not a ton of money, so I think YLCO is kind of floundering in the middle of the pack here, where they'd like to be dominant, as, yeah, he said that one win streak comes to an end, but Nick keeps theirs going through stage 2 and stage 3.
Nick 100 HP coming into 4. That is absolutely awesome. Rabbit Fufu dropping down just a tiny bit after a couple of losses, but still looking very, very strong. Then we've got this chunk of players from 68 to 50 health, but then just tiny bit behind them, you've got our bottom 3, only JX, YLCO, and Ben in brackets currently propping up the table. And who we are looking towards now. That is going to be only JX, seeing where they're at. This is, of course, the Gadget team player we talked about. I was excited to see what the NAR would bring. Unfortunately, haven't been able to get Hacker activated. Still missing that LeBlanc.
And that's going to be a little bit frustrating. Because see, finding all the Kaisers that other players might be very happy to see. There is LeBlanc to complete the recipe for success. But this NAR is still only 1 star. While the itemization might be good, some more rolling I would think will be necessary to really cement a reversal to this loss streak.
So they're playing the deep board. They're going to bring that front line really far forward, forcing them onto them, buying extra time for this NAR to get into the back line. It's only going to be the Vi that's targeted first of all, though, which isn't going to be the priority target. It's going to get through his health stripped away, courtesy of a big NAR. But LeBlanc gets on to the NAR before the vice versa can happen. And despite the Bloodthirster shield coming in, LeBlanc does a significant chunk of damage, turns to her 1-star alternate on the other side of the board, rips through her health bar, and Hudson continues to pick up wins.
I mean, this is exactly what I was talking about here. I mean, didn't necessarily come into play massively, but the Brawler's looking very good indeed. We're going to be seeing a full gold augment game. No hero augment at all. And for our players down at the bottom, I think they were probably hoping for something that could dramatically shift their fortunes.
Exactly that. Getting something that's just going to be able to dominate the board, that maybe is an item carrier that you've been waiting for. It's not going to happen for some of these players now. So for the likes of Nick and for Rabbit at the top of the table, I think this is the best case scenario. In a moment, hopefully we'll get a chance to have a little look at how Nick is doing and where that spatula ended up going. But for now, we're continuing to focus on OwnJX as they try to get this NAR. There it is, finally getting the 2-star NAR, and that is going to be a big spike. We're going to see the crit being, the Thieves' Gloves being put onto the Lulu. Now it's all about where this targeting goes. Are we able to see some of these backline units actually knocked off by this NAR? I think we're going to see a clump targeted very quickly with these dual Sivers being focused down very, very fast. Fully itemized NAR, just about to hit its first ultimate. It's negated by the Shen block, however, and Siver is still free firing. Won't be for much longer, however. Hasn't turned the attention onto the NAR, and this has gone much, much better. Positioning has been good for the Oni JX in this round. Meanwhile, at the other side, you can see Pantheon, you can see NAR trying to do what they can to rip through the opposition health, but they've not done anywhere near as well as the Hacker NAR has, and it is going to be, in the end, one last big NAR into the wall. NAR versus NAR action. Rabbit takes the loss.
For only, along with Ben and Hudson, those 3 players in particular, they need to be locking down first places in this game to stand any chance of making it into the top 3, which is where our players want to be. Of course, top 1 is best, but with only this and the next game to go, you know, you've got to start adjusting your sights on what's realistic.
Okay, so just flicking around the board, having a little look at who's going on, and it's going to be, oh, here we go. This is a battle to stay in contention, really, because one of these 2 players could be dropped down to single digits on the back of a big loss. Maybe less so for OwnJX, but we're going to see Ben in brackets desperately trying to find that luck to get them a first win. Mordekaiser, Mace dropping from the skies. Garen's having that health been ripped through very quickly, and it is going to be the Mecha Garen that is reigning victorious. Only JX taken down to the last place.
I mean, it's not looking good for JX at all. Solo, we're starting to see good Don being dropped down there as well. Don 11 points right now, is currently chasing the top players. So having a bottom finish here would be disastrous for them. I'm fascinated to see how Ben's 4 ace board does get put together here, because it's not something that we've just generally been seeing a ton of, but it does seem like a couple of our players so far today have been actively pursuing it.
They have, but this is the first time that we're, I think, seeing it active, if my memory serves me correctly. So, well, I guess we'll see where that power is and if it's enough to turn things around. This is absolutely massive, because Nick, who we haven't actually seen yet to see if they've used that last spatula, has just got another spatula. So if they'd saved the prior spatula, that's a Tactician's Crown right there. If it's not, then maybe they're getting themselves another emblem, just boosting up what units they can put in later on as well.
Last bit of switching around here. At least we got the beginnings for Ben of a win streak. As you can see, checking out the top of the Infinity is on the mind there. And of course, you know, the more Infinity emblems you have in the mix, the more you're able to modify what your board is doing. In this case, Nick is bringing out 2 Kaisers from the back line. and giving them a lot more flexibility as to how they approach these rounds.
We turn to Rabbit Fufu, who's currently in second place, trying to claw back. Nick, having taken a lot of health lost recently. Decent damage coming out of the double Sivers, firing away on the side. Nice itemization coming in for the secondary one with the Death Blade, with the Rage Blade, but with one massive crushing sword falling from the sides. It will be Demacian Justice. That means the end of Rabbit Fufu's fun.
The Rabbits, I think, still waiting to fully come online. Level 8 doesn't have the full version of the Infinity Team Compass yet. It's missing the Ezreal primarily. But it's still got room to grow with this composition. The Infinity Team emblem is in play, so 7 is open. We've got the chance as well to bring the Garen online as well and get the huge hit on the front line rather than this placeholder now.
Yeah, it's not ideal for them. Instead, they're going to opt into the Fiddlesticks, which of course you can double up with Infinity Team as well. It's still going to be Pantheon that's coming this time round. The extra Infinity Team emblem not actually being used. It is used in time. No, it's not used in time to get the second unit out, I don't believe. So that is going to be a little bit of lost damage for Rabbit Fufu, activating that one just a little bit too late. We'll be able to bring the Garen in next time, just as you were talking about, however, and already you can see the work it's able to do, even just as a 1-star, buying so much time for the Samira to fire from the back line. The bullet time does good work for YLCO, but not enough to save their bacon.
Well, checking out YLCO's bench, we do see there's a lot of familiar faces in there. So there's a chance that YL will be trying to play for the 3-star versions of the Kaiser carry rather than just the 2-star Usinas. There we go. That's the 7 Infinity Team online if you want to take it. Though currently the Samira, I mean, is a pretty big unit to pass up in favor of 7 Infinite Team, so it might actually just be sticking to 5.
Certainly up against a Sol, that's going to be the case, or should I say a Doom, as they tend to be here. We are seeing now the Garen being itemized, getting themselves into a position where they're going to get duplicated in every single game, and that's just a massive amount of stun locking that's going to come for any opposition's board.
Now, the Ezreal is going to be duplicated on the backline as well for maximal power. Again, this is a board that can get stronger and stronger, but we've got plenty more people to keep track of. Only and our friend Banboy, who has been doing very, very well. Both of them at sub 20 HP, so we might see what has been a very promising run for Banboy take an abrupt turn.
Everybody else in the lobby will be delighted to see this and will be doing everything they can to push them out. It's probably got to a point where the units that they're hoping for are being directly contested because everyone knows this is the player to beat. And if suddenly they end up taking a 7th or an 8th, once again, this entire tournament gets flipped on its head. And after 3 of our 4 games, everything's going to be so much tighter at the top. Coming into this game, we do see the Gnar going very aggressive straight onto the Sona. Going to be able to find an early Gnar. He's going to trigger that Fiddlesticks who's sticking around, and that's going to be a fear. Landing on Gnar, buying a little bit of extra time, but you can see just how much great work's been done in the backline. Only JX looking good in this one. Don Master not so much, and it's going to be the 5 casualties that take the dub.
Very heavy push there towards the bottom. Again, the pace of the lobby is picking up dramatically. As I said, things are getting so far out of hand for Banboy. We can see here with their board here, Star Guardian Quick Draw. It's not what they would hope for with the 1-star misfortune as well. And we know the Kaiser is, of course, heavily contested. We noted YLCO has been scooping up every single one of them they can. So this board is probably not going to get that big leap up to the 3-star, and there's no money to do anything for Banboy but try and get a very elusive win.
Positioning is crucial here because if, for instance, you get that Gnar jumping onto the Kaiser, this is just going to be game over no matter what, as the dogs are they're barking their opinion on it as well. Nick's going to come in.
I mean, the knock up onto the Kaiser is, of course, an absolute disaster when you've got no room to work with. To have a bad round like this against a double Ezreal backline, it's just, it's not even a little bit close. And exactly as you said, this opens up game 4 dramatically for everybody else. Now the points leader has been taken down a peg.
That is a complete tournament changer that we've just seen there. And I just want to touch a little bit because I've mentioned it on previous carousels. It was a Tactician's Crown that Nick was able to secure for themselves, courtesy of the double spatulas that we saw them getting on back-to-back carousels. And this is the danger sometimes, where if you're not looking for a particular crown and you decide to opt not into doing it, all you're doing is saying to first place, here's a potential that you could go absolutely massive. And that's exactly how things have worked out. Speaking of massive, that's a big upgrade for YLCO. Their Thieves Gloves Nila will be doing a little bit more now that it's got itself up to 3-star. Still only a 2-star Kaiser so far from the backline. Needs to not get pinched off by this Gnar.
I mean, it's pretty damn strong. I mean, Nila's definitely not as impactful as she will be previously. And YLCO, I'm sure, would love for this to be a 3-star Kaiser instead.
Of course.
Unfortunately, that backline is clumped here, as we've got the threat ball coming in. Aurelion Sol specifically here to punish clumps, but the front line not strong enough. YLCO holds on for another round, but it's looking like we've got 1, 2, maybe even 3 eliminations.
Guaranteed 2 with Ben in brackets, Dom Master both biting the dust. Now we turn over to Oni JX. We see how they fare. They survive. They go up to their 5 health, as is YLCO as well. Meanwhile, Nick, Rabbit, Hudson, all 30 health or more. Only 22 health separating all of them.
Oh boy. So yeah, our top 3 seem to be set in stone if neither of these ones can hold on.
Emblem.
Oh man. You can see immediately in the all chat and the lobby. TFT, definitely one of those games where you're not required to keep your feelings to yourself.
That's entirely fair enough. This is the one thing I say about TFT from time to time, Peter. You know, I'll have them around probably every stream a little bit, and that is that as someone who very much enjoys for sure what is a skill level to play at the very best, it is still a game where there is a significant chunk of luck still having to be factored in, and from time to time that can be frustrating. Sometimes you hit them, sometimes you don't, but at the end of the day, to perform well, to get the sort of results that we've seen from the likes of YLCO, Bandboy in our first couple of games, you still have to be an absolutely class player. However, we've already had one of them go out in 8th. We could be about to see one of them go out in 5th, but we won't be watching that fight now. Instead, we turn our attention towards Rabbit Fufu against Nick, a battle at the top of the table. This is Liverpool versus Manchester City for the football fans amongst you. Look at the true shot barrages ringing across from both sides. Lucian still double tapping away, trying to rip through the last bit of help on this Garen. Pantheon has survived so absurdly long. So is Fiddlesticks. Tries to get a second ult out, but the Crowstorm isn't coming. Instead, Ezreal fires out one last time, and the Infinity team at the top of your screen takes the win.
Only is all the way out of there. YLCO holding on. Ooh. This could be the door back in as Rabbit, yeah, with a pretty solid board here. The 7 Infinity team. I can see that maybe some other people in the lobby want to just come and peer upon this travesty for themselves.
We talked about a lot of Ultimate Ezreals being picked up earlier on and people getting frustrated by it, but we're seeing the irritation, the pings going on to that 2-star Ultimate Ezreal. It's going to come in with 3 items in tow, which is what we saw doing the work in the last fight, for I believe for Nick. And now this is do or die time for YLCO. We're not going to see their fight. Instead, it's going to be Hudson and Rabbit. One of these two looking to try and really lock in a potential second or even higher place. The Mass Injustice does come down from the Infinity and Garen. That's going to be a nice tidal wave courtesy of the Crab God. But there on the back line, it's the 3-star Jax. It's not living anywhere near as long as it did earlier on. The Brawlers are fading in the late game. Meanwhile, YLCO is not. They secure a crucial victory against Nick as they hang on in there.
Gosh, I was really hoping the Brawlers would have a better shot there, but yeah, they just got completely overrun. It's always a bit tricky that, you know, certainly with the Brawlers, you've got a lot of HP to play with, but you don't necessarily always have the defensive stats you need. YLCO holding on like this, I think, is going to really push some of the other players out as well. I mean, Hudson and YLCO, they're both in a prime sniping position. I think one of them's at least got to go in the immediate future.
It's looking like this lobby is reaching its conclusion as we see Morgana dropping her rewards. And just in terms of what this means for the competition, we've got players here in this Final Four who are all round about sort of the top of the table. So YLCO, Rabbit, Fufu, they were second, joint second coming into this game. Nick was down in 5th, but a win could really swing things back in their favor. They want to see Rabbit, Fufu. They want to see YLCO going out sooner rather than later. Hudson, meanwhile, they were right at the bottom of the table coming into this game, but already an incredible showing.
All right, we'll see if YLCO, who is 1 Kaiser away from the Kaiser 3, will be able to hold on. The big friend providing a little bit more beefiness, but this Infinity board is obscene.
All right, here we go into this board. Big one for YLCO.
I mean, this is the thing. You've got the misfortune. She's only got the bow added in as of yet. Whilst, I mean, you see the beginnings of what that competition could have been. Misfortune, with just the bow, had the highest DPS on the team, but it still didn't matter.
It didn't, and that was the end of Wildstyle. It was also the end of Hudson. We have a top 2, which means now for Nick and for Rabbit Fufu that they are really going to be pushing right towards the top of this table as we head into our final game.
So we're looking at these two facing up against each other. We know the Infinity Team comp is based heavily around its attack damage. All the carries itemized right now are attack damage, and there's Defender on the other side of the field. This is going to be every round a huge brawl, Infinity Team versus Infinity Team.
It's the Fiddlesticks at the minute that's doing good work, just neutralizing the backline for as long as possible, negating the damage coming out of Nick.
Well, I guess when it's all said and done, it wasn't actually that close towards the end. Having an extra level in the mix, I mean, I don't like the chances here of Rabbit Fufu. They've got, if they can survive one more round, they can get one more item on the Ezreal, but that wasn't even a little bit close at the end.
I am just sort of doing some little bits of maths in my head, trying to work out what this means for the state of the competition. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I think we're going to be looking, regardless of how this game plays out, at Rabbit Fufu being our chip leader coming into the last round. The question is, how much will they be leading by? Because if they can turn this round somehow in this game, that would be absolutely huge for them, and they're almost at a place where they can hit level 9.
I think the big problem for Rabbit Fufu here is, the Zephyr is making such a big difference. Losing the Samira from your damage profile is everything. But we do see the Fiddlesticks is buying a little bit of time, but without the main damage, Rabbit holding on by a thread. There is no last stand in play, I promise you.
I know, I was thinking that. I quickly looked towards the augments and, of course, did not see it there. Instead, only exiles. And it looks at this point like Rabbit Fufu will be exiled from being able to get first place in this game. They will be getting up to level 9, I believe, in terms of the gold they've got available, but only just. And literally, they'll have spent every single penny of it.
Oh, boy. I mean, all credit to Hudson coming out of there in third place from University of Durham. The Brawlers did do a pretty decent job. That's the third item coming in for Ezreal, and that is a significant item because it's going to mean just much more uptime in the Ezreal because he needs to be casting very frequently. But I just don't think enough has changed here in this last round for anything different to happen for Bunny Fufu, for Rabbit Fufu.
It's a good throwback, isn't it? Let's be honest. Nick coming in, hoping to make this a victory lap. The Infinity Team's looking strong. The Zephyr lands onto Samira in the back line. It is all about what damage the ultimate Ezreals will do to each other. And as you can see, their health bars are rinsed from Nick. They drop out in second. From Fufu, and that will be the win. Going over to Nick, a really, really dominant performance, a great showing, push them up through the table. Same can be said for Rabbit Fufu, as they now look even stronger in this tournament.
I mean, that's the whole thing, is that you end up in a very different situation depending on where you are in the competition. We knew that all of our players were going to be trying to go for this big swing towards the tail end here. And Nick from the University of Bristol said, they came into this one with very low expectations in terms of their ability to hang with these main players. But I think that last board, that last style of play really showed us that when push comes to shove, they can deliver.
And I think it's going to leave them probably in the top 3 coming towards our finale as well. So when we do come back from a small break, we'll have a little look at what the standings are, who are going to be the players that we're going to be really focusing on as we try and find out our top 3, who's claiming that prize pool and that Monster Energy prize.
Come with us. The new generation. The next level. Sending it big.
You're in for a good run. Let's go.
Come with us to the track, to the trails, to the slopes, to the surf, to the fight, to the race.
Look at this!
To the 4 a.m. starts, training harder, pushing further, hitting back, hard. To the fans, to the followers, and the haters. Come with us to the blood, to the sweat, and the broken bones. you, Rehab. We never quit. We never give up. We take control. To the world titles. To the world's first. The world's best. Ready? Come with us. We're just getting started.
It's going to be so much fun. I promise you.
Let's go! Monster Blade!
Let's go! Nice.
Monster Blade!
That right there, Monster Plays of the Week.
Okay.
Monster Energy is doing a monster slide giveaway.
NSE stay-at-home series.
Supported by Monster Energy.
Good morning, crack student gamers, and welcome to the British University Esports Championship Spring 2022. It's been a long time coming, and we're now live from Insomnia. We're back bigger than ever. We have so much going on here.
It's a place for all competitive gamers to come along. Even if you're not amazing, you can still take part, which is really nice, and you meet so many different students from different unis. It's just really nice, like a fun place to be.
And the NSE, by being at Insomnia, is really amazing. Especially a small, isolated university like Oxford, it's great to meet other students who are into esports.
So we've got a spectator area where the student communities come and they're meeting up for the first time in probably 2 years, getting to watch the finals, and then we've also got the teams on stage playing against each other. And then also we've got a student LAN as well, as kind of like a mini LAN in a wider bring your own computer over the weekend. Super grateful for our sponsors. Our headline partner is Intel. We're also partnered with Barclays, Monster Energy, providing loads of Monster Energy to keep everyone fueled over the weekend. PT Specialist, Special Effects, and we're also partnered with Bucks as well.
Everyone in the university scene is so welcoming and so lovely. You don't see people like this anywhere else, like in a community together. And it's just all about creating those connections with different people, and it's just really amazing.
Come with us. The new generation. The next level.
Welcome back, everyone, to the NSE Stay at Home series. We are coming to our last round of TFT today. Greyhound, we have seen all manner of upsets. We're only doing 4 games today, but we've already been on a roller coaster.
3 different winners from all 3 games, could well have a 4th coming into this last one, and that could be the all-decisive thing. We get a chance to have a little look at the points coming into this final game of what's been a tremendous tournament across 2 days.
We knew coming into this on YLCO was the firm favourite, but Rabbit Fufu has managed to bounce across. Coming into our final game, we've got 4 different players who've all got a decent shot at taking first place here. Of course, a lot of that is going to rely on Rabbit Fufu falling down, but as we saw from our previous lobby, the current points leader can absolutely take a big L and open the door for everybody else.
And I think we've seen a little bit of targeting as well. I feel like there was quite an intentional amount of disrupting towards Banboy in that last one. And if we see the same thing here going towards the likes of Rabbit Fufu at the top of the table, maybe some of these players end up with a little bit of mutually assured destruction, because at the end of the day, we have got players from similar universities here. And if someone decides to play a little bit of spoiler in helping a university go run, that's not against the rules. So it could actually have an impact.
Yeah, well, University of Bristol, as you can see, doing pretty darn well so far. Of course, Rabbit Fufu from the University of York. But the University of Bristol are one of the ones with the two top performing players. But you're right, there's going to be a lot of eyes on a Rabbit Fufu, whose main fun fact they've told us is that the secret to Rabbit Fufu's powers is not having eaten today. So I think that hunger for victory is what's driving Rabbit right now.
Hunger for victory, and maybe they might be able to round things off by celebrating. If they were able to take first place, how would they be able to celebrate? Well, they'd take the lion's share of the prize pool and a Monster Energy prize as well. If you guys out there, if you'd like to be able to get your hands on a Monster Energy prize, then put yourself MonsterDrop in the chat, and anybody who does that and is 18 or over will be entered into a chance to win a fantastic prize courtesy of our terrific sponsors.
I thank them very much for their support. Of course, coming into the final game, do bear in mind, as we'll talk about a little bit later on, the stay-at-home will continue with League of Legends on Sunday, or on Saturday with League of Legends, sorry, and on Sunday with Valorant starting at 4 p.m. UK time, because we are almost done with TFT, but our players are far from finished. We know they'll bite tooth and claw every single one of these points, trying to overtake Rabbit Fufu and take themselves the title.
We've talked about having different winners in each game, Peter, but this was the first time we had a winner that was not playing Kaiser.
That's a fair point. Gosh, I think it's the case where if we can get up to, to the capped board, then Infinity Team's always going to be just a little bit harsher, because you can make really good use of those legendary units and potentially duplicate them as well. It's just that outside of that quite specific situation where you've got an Infinity Emblems coming in, it's just so much more practical to get a Kaiser board online.
I don't disagree with you, but in that last one, our top two did come down to Infinity Team versus Infinity Team. It was the one that got their hands on more emblems and a Tactician Crown that got the win. That was Nick last time round. They put themselves in the conversation for potentially winning this whole thing as a result, pushed themselves into joint second alongside YLCO, our game one winner. This is a player in YLCO who won multiple games in a row the other day, and coming into today, fallen off a little bit in our last couple of games, but they are still there and thereabouts, as you'd expect them to be, as we come towards the conclusion of our tournament.
I mean, I'm certainly grateful that of the most recent patch that some of these compositions, including Infinity Team, did get nerfed, but I do wonder if maybe there just hasn't been enough put together to bring some other comps into the limelight. Instead, we're just sort of seeing the same stuff. Because everything's been proportionally reduced by the same amount of strength, we kind of end up in broadly the same place we were before. I mean, minus the LeBlanc setup, which certainly will be grateful for, but as it is, Kaiser, Infinity Team seem to be the primary part of the winning story, at least.
My eyes very much drawn towards the board, already starting to be set up here by Rabbit Fufu. Only an Ezreal away from already getting underground up and running. And we know that if you can get that going really, really early, how much impact that can have on late game.
For Rabbit Fufu, I do like this kind of approach here, especially if they can get the underground online early on. If you take a somewhat earlier cash out than you might otherwise, you're still a step ahead of everybody else and very likely to finish in the top 4. If Rabbit can't find the underground early enough, they'll have to settle for something else, perhaps a Draven composition.
Looking at building that one up, getting a couple of defenders in so they know that as they get towards their first play-by-play, they've at least got the makings of something on their board. Holding onto the Sivir as well, maybe in the hopes of repeating the sort of composition we saw last time.
Oh boy! Well, we've got our hearts on the line here. Gadgeting Heart, we know, is a huge step up if you want to go towards an R setup. We've already got a Tyson's ready to go on the bench. This has got to be tempting.
Tempting for sure, but we did see the Gadgetines plummeting out in roundabout 4th place in the last game, whereas Star Guardian could cap out exceptionally heavily, especially if you get your hands on an extra Star Guardian to pump out the damage with the Misfortune. It is the Star Guardians that's opted into on this occasion.
I mean, that's going to be a huge increase in the, to get the Star Guardian 2, the Star Guardian 4 online very quickly.
Ooh.
We can already see YLCO, of course, laying down the gauntlet with the traditional method, which is to slam a static ship immediately and say, "What do you think I'm going?"
Well, what do you think they're going is always a good question, as you're seeing the 3 spell slingers, the 2 hearts already here, but they are going to go up against Rabbit, where we obviously already saw earlier on they were getting their hands on the Star Guardian heart early on, and it looks like with this Draven in the backline, they're going to be mighty tanky enough. Surprised a little bit that given that we had the Sona pick up early from YLCO, they didn't go straight into an underground. Maybe it's a pivot they'll still be looking towards. They're not going to have to worry about a lost streak just yet.
I do take your point, though. We haven't seen a tremendous amount of Oxforce Spellslinger being brought out post the most recent change. So does make me wonder that maybe that will be on YLCO's mind. As much as we've seen him be willing to try a whole bunch of different directions. Not picking up the Alistair, though, I think that would be a relatively big tell. That's not going to be a long-term solution for YL.
And I will see the pivots come in a little bit later on, of course. Might have to contest units with Star Guardians already having been locked in by Rabbit Fufu if they do want to go towards the likes of the Kaiser, which they like, but we will see, as always we do. Underground player versus underground comp here. It's going to be Don this time, who is going to be playing the underground up against YLCO, who's become so famed for it in the last few games, but decided to play a little bit more, erring on the side of caution this time round.
So we've got our top 4 players, Rabbit Fufu, Nick, YLCO, and Bamboy, who are all fighting for first place. Don Master occupies the middle ground, where the remainder of the players really are just here to try and get as many points as possible and battle for, say, third. But Don Master is the interesting spot of being on 13 points, well behind everybody else, but with a tiny, tiny window of possibility that if everybody else goes in bottom 4, maybe Don can sneak in and get a first and potentially cinch the crown.
It's genuinely possible, and how better to try and go towards that 8 points that you'd almost certainly need than to go the underground path we've seen YLCO having success with earlier on. So maybe we'll get that massive stacked out board for Don Master, but at the moment, not looking quite so bright for them.
If we check in with Bamboy, who of course was in pole position before and ready to really dominate the competition, but had that disaster of an 8th after accidentally picking up combat training for a non-AD board, is bringing out something which we haven't seen very much of so far, the Laser Core. We know that with the right setup, this can be a really, really powerful board.
It can, but it isn't right now, which is why that's why YLCO will be able to keep going with the win straight into Carousel. 3 players untouched in terms of their health bars so far, and there's some huge items available here.
I mean, there's an Infinity emblem literally right there. That is so disgusting on the first carousel and everything. I mean, if you're looking for a comeback story for Bamboy, they were going for Laser Core before, but surely now it's Infinity all the way to the bank.
It's got to be. I would be utterly shocked if we see anything else. And it just once again reinforces why sometimes these weaker starts can be rewarded so heavily on a first carousel. It's a danger sometimes with the carousels. And I actually had a fun conversation recently with one of the top level players. And they were saying how one of the things they're not enjoying on this set is the fact that with the carousel changes, one thing you can get is a component anvil, where when you're going towards a third or a 4th carousel, you want to get a particular 4 or 5 cost unit. And the fact that you're last means you've got the earliest option to try and get that. The fact that you're getting this item anvil feels like an equalizing thing, where actually if you're coming out last because you're currently at the top of the health points, there's no equalizer there. So I understand that, but in this particular instance, we're really seeing how it can pay off massively being in last, and I expect Bamboy to run with this one.
What we do know, as we see here with Ben, who is currently, I believe, the lowest points player in the competition, looking to try and at least end out the tournament on a win, is already in Infiniteam. So I suppose the good news is, as we've already established, in our previous game, Infinity Team definitely can support at least 2 players. You don't need to be 3-starring, I think, anything in the composition at all for it to work. So it's not as bad news as it could be for Banboy or for Ben in the Brackets to have to contest.
Not at all. And I genuinely expect to see both of them round about the top side of things if this current trajectory continues later into the game. Getting some options on some admins and seeing what's taken up, but doesn't look like we're going to be playing the admins just yet. In fact, they're immediately sold off on the back of seeing what was available to themselves. And this is the only who's currently on that 100% health going in towards neutral, wanting to keep that the same. And I think with their opposition being who it is, I think that will probably be the case. It's going to be very, very difficult here for Hudson to turn this one around. Jinx will fire out from the back line, get a couple more stacks potentially, but nothing more than that.
And it's always frustrating when you're playing an Anima Squad board and you're not going to be able to pick up the stacks because you're just getting run over. But Infinity Team is so strong early on, and with that last dip into Infinity Team from only, that does mean we've at least got 3 players going down this route right now. So perhaps what I was saying before about they being able to support multiple players might actually start to be tested.
And I think if we hadn't seen the sure shot being invested in here by NJX, hovering over the potential to get this Jhin, I think we would have seen a pivot here. But the fact that the sure shot is invested in means they've sort of made their bet at this point.
Oh yeah, I mean, for sure. Just the ability to even go up to the higher levels of sure shot, even 1 unit earlier, is a massive quantity of AD across multiple units across the round. The itemization is pretty good as well. And hey, why not just get even more of it?
Well, here's what I was thinking. Yes, you're right. But what if? What if the game is trying to tell you something? You've just had your neutral round drop you 2 pikes at the same moment that Jhin came available to you. I think you sometimes would be foolish to not look at the game saying, please do this.
I mean, I'd be fascinated to see if the Listen to the Wind was strong enough there for only to switch up, but
I think I genuinely believe if they see a Vex soon, they'll think about the switch.
All right, well, we'll have to see it. I mean, right now they're thinking most about our friend Ben, who is currently on a win streak, manages to duck them for now, but there's only so long our 2 win-streaking players can go up against each other. I think they're going to want to have the most immediate ball power for when that happens.
A valid point, and at the very least they've been able to get out of that neutral round, getting their max economy. They'll want to keep that going for as long as possible, as you were just saying there, Peter, and they turn their attention to what's going on at the moment with Venom's board, and what's happening is they've lost that win streak, whereas the NJX, they keep theirs alive.
Well, that exciting clash between our 2 win-streaking players will have to be put on hold, because we've got ourselves some hero augments, and these are actually more towards the cheap side, but there is one prime augment that YLCO can find, and they do.
And as you saw there, they had the option of the first Kaiser augment, rolled straight past it, knowing they were getting tailored options, always an exceptionally heavy chance they got the one that they wanted, picking it up, and that is such a game changer.
Oh my gosh, so multi-shot in play. We know that YLCO has been more inclined to try more of a reroll style of play, but from what we've got right now, we've got the underground in play, so...
What a shock.
I know, but this isn't normally the kind of combination we've got, but Ezreal, of course, being quick draw along with Kaiser means that this board's designed to just eliminate 1 or 2 targets whilst to soften the loss streak while keeping the underground going.
Let's see if they are going to continue losing. I actually think this comp looks strong enough that up against any apart from maybe our top 2, they're going to keep on picking up wins. They're going up against Donmaster, who is anything but top 2 at the moment, but it looks like your prediction's going to come pretty accurately true, Peter.
I don't know about that.
I take it back. I take it back. As soon as that spread shot came through, I knew I was wrong.
So this is the problem that YLCO's got right now. As you said, he was greedy. He wanted only the finest of augments for his board, but that has messed with the loss streak. I mean, admittedly, Kaiser and Nila in the same shop is saying, if we're listening to what the game is telling us, it's saying to YLCO, don't worry, everything will be fine forever.
forever is not how long only JX was able to keep their win streak going, and no longer are we able to talk about those two win streakers facing each other because they've both dropped down onto 11 health. Rabbit Fufu, on the other hand, getting a little win streak of their own going and might overtake into first place, which is big news for our current chip leader in this tournament.
See? Some very strong emotions being put at play here because, of course, Rabbit, there's a reason why Rabbit is so mad about this current situation, because he has not managed to find any Kaisers to go with this Kaiser ball, which is obviously being put together here with all this itemization. And perhaps Rabbit won't... I mean, Rabbit's, to be fair, without the Kaiser, is still putting together a surprisingly strong winning board. Maybe you didn't need the Kaiser. Maybe the power was inside of you all along.
I think they needed the Kaiser. Oh, that's got to be frustrating, though. I mean, we've all been there, haven't we, Peter? Like, seeing our opposition sort of hit the nuts in our proverbial game of TFT poker, and unfortunately not getting any of it ourselves, and just wondering if it's ever going to happen for us. This is the sort of carousel I was talking about earlier on, where you're all just getting basically the same thing plus a slightly different component, and all of a sudden there's no reward for the likes of your Don Masters, your Hudsons at the bottom of the table.
As we come to the midpoint here of our final game of the NSE stay-at-home series for Team Fight Tactics, we have had some shocking pronouncements from the chat, Greyheart. I feel like you are well equipped to address this.
Oh, no.
Avail saying cereal is just breakfast soup. What do you have to say to such a shocking stance?
Yeah, but soup's good, so that's fine.
All right, there we go. It's been accepted. We live in a new and scary world. Rabbit may not have any breakfast, but they also don't have any Kaisers, and those two things go well together.
Breakfast and Kaiser?
Don't dig too deeply on that one. You won't find any answers you like.
Now. I'm also pretty confused by what we're seeing here, which is the return to Laser Corp, and of course admin with the Warwick being a crucial unit. Real close battle here. Rabbit Fufu trying to hang on to their health points if they can.
Yeah, this is fascinating. It's so rare to see a player go back and forth, but this has been our final lobby here. It's been such an interesting approach where people are trying all these different things you'd normally expect to see, and for the most part, they're actually working pretty well.
They're working great, and actually all of a sudden Banboy is pushing back through the ranks again, trying to find the sort of win which they did earlier on, which could elevate them from 4th place in this competition all the way up to the heady heights of winning top prize, and of course the Monster Energy prize that would come with it. If you're interested in winning one of those yourselves, make sure that you have put MonsterDrop into the chat. We will be drawing, I believe, one more prize winner tonight.
Thank you for letting us know. Again, our thanks to Monster Energy for supporting today's event. As Banboy, is making great... I love the Tactician's Crown with this Laser Core board. With the more recent changes to Laser Core, meaning that every unit gets a drone, just having more bodies on the field is a significant upgrade of damage.
It is. It's an upgrade of damage that really hits hard if you're down the bottom table. And Don Master, unfortunately, yet again, finding themselves in a position where they are propping things up a little bit and probably going to be going home without any kind of reward for their efforts. But full credit to the fact that they and other players who maybe won't finish in the top 3 in this tournament even made it to this final day up against strong opposition, seeing out so many players from yesterday's games.
Not seen any more Yasuo since then.
It's worth noting as well that we have got a large egg on everybody's bench, so that's going to be a significant infusion of gold and items coming through. It will affect the way our players will be playing, because they can, they can be a little bit more free and easy with spending out their econ and slamming items, knowing that they've got a little extra infusion waiting to happen.
Peter, I did not expect to be saying that the second most contested type of unit in this lobby behind the Kaiser is Brawlers, as we have 2 players both going hard into the Brawlers, with certain ones hoping to use them as primary carries, as we can see here as a potential for the Warwick coming through. Of course, this is going to be the Yasuo augment as well, and I believe that it's the not the non-supportive one.
Yes, so Yasuo, they claim... I never want to take right of the word on these kind of things, because you never know for sure that the Yasuo who now, with the carry augment, will now put out a very large ultimate. His AI has apparently been fixed, so keep your eyes closely on him. If it's working as intended, he should dash to the side and knock up pretty much the entire team of Brawlers in a second.
We'll find out. Positioning working as intended. Steel Tempest rips through a lot of health bars. This is a duelist Yasuo as well, because the TF was picked up as we saw level 7 being secured by Benin just before this round began. The Yas does eventually die, but the Ashe still firing good damage out from the back line. Meanwhile, on the sidelines, the Egg watches on, wondering, will its owner be victorious? And sadly, Benin brackets, one says no.
Of course, Greyheart, with eggs this large on the field, we'll have to put you into the Cult of Egg as Laser Core Heart comes in. It's worth bearing in mind, again, your eyes do not deceive you. On the left-hand side, Ben's bracket says completely abandon Infiniteam in favor of Laser Core, and the Laser Core gods are smiling.
And this is what happens when you go into something less contested. How long were they going to realistically have to wait for the likes of an Ultimate Ezreal? Probably very, very long. But on the 1% drop, yes, it's lucky they get the Maud, but it's less contested. There's less chance anyone else has picked it up. And suddenly, this is Laser Corp 6 at 4-2.
That is an absolute ton of damage. I mean, for Ben, they can just, push levels here and get more in. I think we've got probably the replacement of the Yasuo coming sooner or later. We're not seeing, say, the old-style Omnivamp Yasuo who would be put up to 3-star. Instead, Mordekaiser could easily receive these items and turn into a massive alternate damage threat.
Well, we'll have to wait a little while before that one happens, because they're going up against only JX, who actually did not go for the pivot that I thought they might do, but they have lost a lot of health despite that.
Yeah, they're taking a pretty big hammering here, and I mean, in our previous lobbies, we were really looking and seeing who could really shake up the way things were being played, because it was all about Infiniteam late game. Laser Core, we can see, is fully online right now, and that's going to push the pace of the lobby and stop people from putting together these hugely ridiculous late game boards, because they're just going to take too much damage getting there. They'll have to spend their gold sooner.
6 Kai'Sa now here for YLCO, getting closer and closer to that ultimate goal.
If you can see, though, there's plenty of other people on the Kai'Sa trade, including people you can't find it. But Hudson goes up to 7 Anima squad. You're talking about players who were playing uncontested line. Hudson has done exactly that.
Has done that, but is running out of health points to play with, Peter.
Let's see how it goes here. We've got these... Again, we've got the Star Guardian Misfortune in the mix. We've got the beginnings of a good board here for Don Master, but it's not quite there yet.
Peter, this is a huge round for YLCO to potentially win, because this would lock Don Master all the way down to death's door, and it would mean more and more of the Kaisers coming back into the pool, less contention happening, and there is going to be health stripped away from Don Master nearing the exit.
Do bear in mind, though, YLTO, an entertainer to his core, is still running underground.
Yeah.
At this point. So, far be it from us to ever forget exactly how YLCO plays TFT.
Big underground abuser, I think, is the 3-word descriptor for this player, but it's worked out so far, so, you know what? If you can't beat them, join them. I'll be playing underground in my next game.
And I'll be going 8th with underground in my next game as well. It's fun.
That bit was just unsaid for me. I mean, we all knew that was happening.
Oh, gosh. So the key is, if you're going to be a great underground player, listen closely, chap. You've got to be willing to go to underground 7. Because otherwise, what are you even there for, honestly?
Oh, dear. I don't know what I was expecting you to say, but it wasn't that. But this is coming from the same person who's been on at me about breakfasts and cereal soup, so...
The chap helped me out to it.
I keep telling you, don't let that chat bully you into, bizarre tangents. Do it because you've thought of them yourself.
I'd never think of anything as dramatically weird as that. But YLCO, though, I mean, there's no weirdness here. There's only clean play from dawn to dusk. The Brawlers will be arriving on the field, but we switch back across to our friend Rabbit, who has got an extremely strong firing Misfortune, but no cast speed item directly. But when she does cast, it's a tidal wave.
That is absolutely devastating damage. Rabbit is going to be able to show off at the damage coming out of the Misfortune straight into YLCO's face. YLCO getting closer and closer to the Kaiser goal and might be able to get even closer now that Don Master is out of there. Hudson, the Anima player, unfortunately out as well. We're down to 6.
The Anima squad, unfortunately, just didn't deliver here. I think some of that is that the Misfortunes are being contested, which is what we kind of expected. Yeah, Don gone as well, so that's our kind of middle of the pack player who maybe could have got something happening. Right now, our top 4 front runners, Rabbit, Nick, YLCO, and Bamboy are all still alive.
They're all still alive, and it's becoming more and more important how many people are going out before them, Peter, because the number of points that they're all going to be gaining is suddenly getting closer and closer to each other, which is great news for Rabbit Fufu at the top.
I mean, YL, I believe, no, it still does have the underground in play, which is, I really do like it because it gives you this kind of escape valve that even if you lose rounds, you're getting something out of it. But I'd like you to stay with me. Egg, 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 egg. There we go. Just a little egg.
The egg hatches, the payout is offered. It's a Bloodthirster, it's an Infinity Force, and it's gold. Take it or leave it, Peter.
Leave it. Nah, come on, YLCO. You got 38 health. Admittedly, Nick and is going to be going full bore to try and stay in the top 4, so there could be some harsh losses in the future. I think those cash out items are probably fine, though. Especially because the Infinity Force, it makes a decent third item for the Kaiser to really come online fully as well.
Everybody out there in chat just realizing why Peter's going to be coming 8th in his next underground game, I think. But the payout has been taken. Level 8 has been attained. Some big units offered up straight away. The 5 cots showing themselves. Another Neela, but it's the Kaiser that's so desperately being seeked. Sword.
Yes. I wasn't going to say anything. I was going to leave it.
I was so annoyed myself then. I was like, this can't go unsaid.
Correct myself live on stream.
Oh god, I genuinely I ripped out a little bit of hair there.
All right, so let's see what YLCO does. So we've got the cash out. We've got the no. All right. Thank you very much, production. I know we're putting too many demands on this. It's been a brutal day of play. Interesting, YLCO is not actually activating the items as of yet. I don't know if he's looking to try and put his economy back together a little bit before slamming in everything, but waited a really long time to get that third item for the Kaiser.
Waiting a massive long time. We'll have the option of Mana Zane for the Misfortune should they want to, instead opting for the tankier option in Randuin's.
Okay, interesting.
Nick's just dropped out, by the way, which is terrible news for them. It means they probably will end in 4th as a result.
They were tied second with YLCO in this game, so for YLCO, that's fantastic news. Because, being on the same points means just finishing 1 place higher than Nick almost guarantees a better prize. But we've still got a few people left in the mix only, and the rest of the field are very high health. YLCO has little room to maneuver.
Well, Nick, they're lamenting not sticking to the meta, things not quite working out for them. And again, I can't say for definite whether that means 4th place and they're going to miss out on top 3. I think that's how it is, but commiseration to them if it is the case. Now, however, we turn our attention to Rabbit Fufu. The Misfortune is going to just destroy the front line of the Laser Corps before eventually turning onto the last remaining Ash. And big health loss going over to the opposition there.
I'd like to point out, because we did see the damage graph there, that Rel was doing about the same amount of damage as the other 2 carries. Mm-hmm. So it's really easy to miss that there's actually a lot more going on with the Kaiser composition than just Kaiser herself. There's tons of different ways, especially when you've got a fully set up Rel like this. You can actually have multiple angles that make it very hard to shut you down.
Just the little request being put in chat here between the uni compatriots. There's no doubt about who is the one who is being hunted, and it is going to be YLCO who's having to defend themselves against the onslaught of Rabbit Fufu, who's now just essentially taken their part in sort of an old school sort of vendetta film. Meanwhile, big base damage coming out of the Mordekaiser, dropping down buying time for this Misfortune to keep striking. Already finding 1 bullet time, but it's not enough. Or is it? No, it's not.
I think this matches up so well into the Kaiser board, the laser cores does, because you're transferring drones. The Kaiser's so much about doing the single target damage, but because of the drones, the whole laser core idea is disperse damage. You know, if one of your big units falls, its drones move to another unit. You keep up a relatively consistent level of threat the whole way through the round, and Kaiser can never kill everybody.
Making it so tough for those players to try and get first. And one of those players, of course, YLCO, still battling it out for a potential first place in the entire tournament. They started the day with the win. They'll hope to end it with one as well. Final couple of items now coming through. That could be a fully itemized Aurelian Soul once all is said and done. You can see the Janna in play, the Aatrox already to start as well.
I mean, our closest competitors here, YLCO and Bamboy, they're separated by a single point. So you may even have to go into a tiebreaker situation if those end up being our top two. 3-star coming in for Kaiser for the YLCO. How does he do it, Stan?
Well, yeah, it's one of those. I think I said it earlier on. Sometimes in the game, it just says to you, you're going to get this thing. And no matter how good the rest of the players are in the field, you're just going to get the win as a result of that. But you've got to put yourself in the position to be there in the first place. And that comes from the amount of skill that you've got in the game, the ability to play all sorts of different things. And then sometimes, just sometimes, the game will be nice to you. Right now, however, the game is not being nice to JX. And that Warwick is coming back and showing us why we hated it so much a couple of patches ago.
What are you talking about? Warwick was never a problem, I swear. It was fine. It was fine the whole way through. I have it on good authority, which is my own authority. I definitely, I mean, it definitely brings back some harsh memories. You know, I think in the set, there's just a lot of different units that can potentially go off really hard. But for Only, they've got one last chance here. Ben is still in play on 7 points. For Only, they're on 10. So Only has got a chance here to maybe battle for 3rd place.
A potential missed opportunity there by Only JX to go for the Mecha Prime. Let's see if they're made to rue that decision. It's going to be a Red and Soul fire from the backside. Has got some relatively clumped units. Twisted Fate's the crucial one as Misfortune loses their health just at the beginning of bullet time. Aurelian Soul works out, and the decision not to go Mecha works brilliantly. Meanwhile, Ben in brackets. 5th place.
One must stand, one must fall. The laser cores will rule them all, but they cannot stand to be in the same lobby as each other. Notable though, coming into stage 6 as we get another item dropping in, YLCO is still pushing through on a win streak. Rabbit Fufu though, our current points leader, 2 points ahead of YLCO, is still alive as well.
They are hoping to stick around because they know that top 2 guarantees them the win in this tournament. They will be the stay-at-home champions just by getting 1st or 2nd place. Another unit being picked up there. That's going to be another Neela. I think that's just a... No, that is the 3-star Neela. I thought it might be.
We've already seen what kind of damage an Neela can do given the right kind of setup. The YLCO. One more item coming in. One last decision to be made. Star Guardian 6 could be on the cards, but no.
Looking for the rerolls. Try and make it happen, Peter. Not today. The repositioning coming at a crucial moment. Dragon's Claw being picked up just to further accentuate the healing that can come... not the healing, but the defensive unit here that is this Neela. It's a bit of a powerhouse. Let's see if it works out for YLCO.
Only will be their opponent here with the good sure shot and Aurelian Soul board, a classic board when you can't put together one of the meta compositions. Will be battling right up to the end. Rabbit still fighting as well, right out of the corner. Their own Kaiser, immensely strong.
Nail-biting stuff at this point, Peter. Everybody separated by 16 HP, our last 4 players, and Only takes a big loss. They're out of there. That now means we've got a final 3. Rabbit Fufu is on 6 HP. YLCO is on a win streak. And that means all sorts of stuff for the numbers. But right now, all we know is if Rabbit Fufu can outlast one of the 2 competitors, they win.
And that's the making of a player, isn't it? At this kind of moment where you know that even the smallest change of positioning could get you just that tiny bit further, but they have 1 life remaining. YLCO has come for them to try and take the 1st place.
Here we go. YLCL versus Rabbit Fufu. The battle to end them all. Rabbit Fufu here, waiting on the bullet time to rip through. The 3-star Neela absorbs most of the damage, and Kaiser is untouched in the back line. Has ripped through the health bars. Rabbit Fufu is no more. YLCO potentially moments away from victory. Oh, we've got ourselves a showdown between Barnboy and YLCO for the win in this game.
Rabbit Fufu seeing stars off that round, as will be Fanboy as well. Seeing 3 stars, in fact. This is the board which, in this kind of meta, just should not exist. But we are reaching the ultimate edges of what's possible. Of course, YLCO is the player to take us there.
Here we go again, potentially one last time. Fanboy, the only one standing in between YLCO and a second victory of the night. If things come down to tiebreakers, that could end up being crucial if they end up being on the same points as Rabbit Fufu, which is looking all the more likely at this moment. The only one standing in their way, Fanboy, trying to play spoiler, trying to push themselves further up the table as well. Kaiser already striking down. Reddington taken away. Mordekaiser starting to be ripped into. The Solar Fair strike down on the tankiest unit on the opposition. The Urgot smash will get a little bit of time, as does the mace damage. But look at that. Unsurprisingly, undead is Neela. Unkillable YLCO, winning games 1 and 4. They will be the champions.
Oh my gosh. It's TFT. Honestly, when they first came out with TFT, you could definitely tell that Riot did not intend for it to be an esports game at all. But in 4 games today, just 4 games, we have had just such a ride from these players from beginning to end. And for YLCO to take such a big dip before and to come back like that, I think it speaks very well of his longevity in the scene. He's just able to recover in that kind of way.
I mean, they showed a real tour de force yesterday through qualifiers, picking up 3 wins. The fact that they've come into a lobby now with the top 8 players that this NSE tournament could provide, and against those 7 other players, still put up a win in 50% of the games, shows how incredibly dominant they can be. We talked them up as the one to beat at the beginning of the day. They proved to be that, and it proved that no one really could beat them, not by the end of the tournament, at least.
And I think this is a good chance and a good demonstration from what we've seen today, that I think it's very easy to think that when you're a very good player, things should become easier for you. And I think that's actually the opposite of true. It's that if a player is very good, they can tolerate things being really difficult and still function. Because I think, when you're trying to climb and get better, it can seem like the act of losing games and struggling as YLCO did here is the mark of saying, no, you're not a good player. You shouldn't be trying to aim that kind of way. But instead, we've seen the tenacity is what gets you over the line.
What we've seen today, Peter, is top-tier teamfight tactics, and not just from YLCO, who's come out dominant in that last game and throughout the tournament, but also from everybody who was competing. We've seen so many fun things, ranging from the 3-star Garen all the way through to Kaiser, winning 3 out of 4 games and showing how dominant they are in the current meta and why sometimes you just have to stick with that. But altogether, it's been great to see what the UK university scene can show us in teamfight tactics right now.
Oh my gosh. So I believe we'll have our standings come up in a second. Of course, there are prizes for 2nd and 3rd place as well, even if YLCO was able to surge from behind there and eventually take the competition. I mean, I certainly know going forward, every time I see any of these players playing, I'm immediately like, oh, so that's how TFT works. I should just go spam Kaiser all day, every day, forever. Perhaps another day, though. Perhaps
Deep sigh at that point. Here we go. We can have a little look at what this means. Official coronation of YLCO, tournament winner of the lion's share of the prize pool and that Monster Energy prize as well. Rabbit Fufu, same number of points, but 1 less games, takes 2nd place, and the final prize winner, Fanboy, with an incredible showing. Just that 1 game that let them down. First 2 seconds, sadly a last place.
That's the whole thing with how you approach your game. Again, if you're looking to be players like this one, It's just being able to try and, to get rid of games like that round 3 for Bamboy. Even if that had been, a 5th or something similar, they would be in 1st place right now. Their performances are amazing. 2nd, 1st, and 2nd again, and just a 1-8.
Yeah.
Removing that kind of 8th from your play can be so incredibly important. And hopefully, in the long term, that's exactly what they'll do.
Devastating for them there, and it makes me think quite a few interesting things about Underground, which I want to touch on in a moment. But before we do, I really want to shout out our players there from 4th to 8th to the still unpronounceable Nick Wemmold, to Don Master, to the owner JX, Ben in Brackets and Hudson. Commiserations for not getting part of the prize pool, but every single one of them made for this being a real entertaining show. No one threw in the towel after some bad results. We just got to see great teamfight tactics all day long, Peter.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. This is this was the 8 best players in the entire competition. Somebody has to come in the bottom 4 every single game. And as we've seen, even players who come in 3rd still suffer from the same thing. But I hope that for our players who finish in our bottom 4 here, that they have learned, they've learned valuable things from this experience. And I hope as well that they'll have made those kind of contacts which we're talking about right at the beginning of the show that helps you long term become a much, much better TFT player.
Surely something that will help a lot of these players. One final thought on Underground, because it's something I'd wondered about and didn't get the opportunity to ask you your opinion on, Peter, and that's the fact that we've seen, despite some up and down performances for YLCO, they never dropped out of the top 4 while rocking an Underground start every single game, despite taking a lot of loss streaks, despite losing a lot of health early. Does this really show what a position of power it's in, especially when it's in the hands of someone who knows how to play it right?
I think in this, in this setup here, where we are definitely playing towards more late game boards as a whole, you really just need something that's going to get you the edge against those other players. So I think absolutely, if you can get away with Underground, we saw it's not an easy thing to do at all. Even YSCO winning out this competition had those moments in the previous game where, the loss streak was broken unintentionally and the board wasn't quite what it needed to be. So there's a lot of nuance to how it's done. I think it's honestly one of the better economic traits that TFT has seen. So I'm glad it's there, and I'm glad that it takes quite a lot of work to make happen.
It does take a lot of work to make happen, and I don't want to sugarcoat it. This isn't like Kaiser, where it's if you hit that Kaiser, congratulations, you're probably going to win the game because it's so strong in the meta. This is someone who's shown a real understanding of this particular way of doing things to be able to hang on to the right amount of health bar and make those cash outs at the right time to make these games work and to eventually take 1st place.
All right, guys, so that will bring us to the end of our show here today. Before you go, of course, we've got a few things to let you know about. If you'd like to find out more, of course, you can head across to NSE_GG on Twitter for the main NSE account. If you'd like to hear more from Stanley Greyheart Barker, you can do so at Greyheart99. My Twitter is CounterPitCast. But we've got some other things to let you know about as well. The summer signups are coming up. There will be messages sent out on Discord, Twitter, and email. Of course, our thanks again to Monster Energy for today's event. And it's worth remembering as well, this weekend, Stay at Home will continue with the League of Legends on Saturday and the Valorant on Sunday, both of them starting at 1600 hours or 4 o'clock UK time. But for now, we're all said and done. Our thanks so much to everybody behind the scenes, our producer Kenny, for keeping us up and alive here today. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you again down the road.
Come with us. The new generation. The next level. Sending it big.
You're in for a good run. Let's go.
Come with us to the track, to the trails, to the slopes, to the surf, to the fight, to the race.
Look at this!
To the 4 a.m. starts, training harder, pushing further, hitting back, hard. To the fans, to the followers, and the haters. Come with us to the blood, to the sweat, and the broken bones. You rehab. We never quit. We never give up. We take control. To the world titles. To the world's first. The world's best. Come with us. We're just getting started.
It's going to be so much fun, I promise you.
Let's go! MonsterDrop.
Nice.
MonsterDrop.
That right there, monster plays of the week.
Okay.
Monster Energy is doing a monster cycle giveaway.
NSE stay-at-home series
Supported by Monster Energy.
Good morning, cracked student gamers, and welcome to the British University Esports Championship Spring 2022. It's been a long time coming, and we're now live from Insomnia. We're back bigger than ever. We have so much going on here.
It's a place for all competitive gamers to come along. Even if you're not amazing, you can still take part, which is really nice, and you meet so many different students from different unis. It's just really nice, like a fun place to be.
And the NSE, by being at Insomnia, is really amazing. Especially a small, isolated university like Oxford, it's great to meet other students who are into esports.
So we've got a spectator area where the student communities come and they're meeting up for the first time in probably 2 years, getting to watch the finals, and then we've also got the teams on stage playing against each other. And then also we've got a student LAN as well, as kind of like a mini LAN in a wider bring your own computer over the weekend. Super grateful for our sponsors. Our headline partner is Intel. We're also partnered with Barclays, Monster Energy, providing loads of Monster Energy to keep everyone fueled over the weekend. PC Specialist, Special Effects, and we're also partnered with Bucks as well.
Everyone in the university scene is so welcoming and so lovely. You don't see people like this anywhere else, like in a community together. And it's just all about creating those connections with different people, and it's just really amazing.